Chapter 181. Gulping. Zack licked his dry lips and did his best to stop his voice from shaking. Since this morning, the Hansel Index has dropped by 3,000 points, and the $15 billion we invested in has become a total of $29.6 billion. In just one morning, we've earned $14.6 billion. Stock God, Mr. Lane, you really are the god of stocks. Zack shook as he spoke. At the same time, stock traders in the room all looked at Jasper with gazes of utter admiration. As executionists who merely followed his orders, they knew better than anyone how decisive and intellectual Jasper's orders had been. Many of his seemingly inexplicable orders had proven to have incomparable foresight, for the ever-changing capital market would shift a very short moment afterward. It was as if Jasper could see through every secret in this treacherous capital market. Jasper, who had been wearing a solemn expression for the past few hours, finally smiled and said, "All right, let's go eat something now that the market is on break. Eat and drink whatever good food you want. And if there's anything you need, just tell them and they'll fulfill it. Oh, and everyone gets a 100,000 bonus." The stock traders immediately chortled at the news. Meanwhile, Jasper and the rest left for their meal upstairs. Both Michael and Henry kept staring at Jasper as they ate, for Jasper seemed as divine to them as God himself. "How are you so good at this?" Anna spoke honestly. Jasper merely smiled. "Am I? It's still too early for anything to be confirmed. We've only just started." Zachary heard him and asked, "When do you think the Hansel Index will stop dropping?" Jasper fell into thought for a moment and tried to remember the result of the financial crisis in his past life. A total of $3 trillion had vanished in this bubble. That was how terrifying it had been. On the other hand, the Hansel Index had dropped to 8,000 points. That was more than 60%. To explain this concept with a simple example, imagine you invested $100 into the stock market before the bubble. When the bubble was over, you would be left with less than $40. If you happened to invest in a company that went bankrupt and had to exit the market, then you would be left without a single cent. Such was the cruel reality of the financial market. There's no way it'll hold at 10,000 points. I'll say it'll drop past 9,000 at least. Jasper gave a more conservative reply. Zachary and Michael shared a look and sucked in a cold breath. They understood what the figure Jasper gave them signified. Such a figure meant that Harbor City's economy was set to lose at least 5 years of its economic growth. "What's with your expressions? Don't we earn more the more it drops?" Henry asked dumbly. Anna glared at him and replied, "That's why I told you to read more in your free time. Sure, we'll earn more the further it drops. But you have to remember that our family and Mr. Lane's family both have roots in Harbor City. How are business families like us supposed to continue making money when Harbor City's economy is screwed?" Henry was stunned and quickly responded, "You're right. What do we do?" Jasper was deep in thought. He had been a mere bystander who could only witness what was happening after it happened in his past life. He had only learned of the economic crisis that burst the bubble afterward through reports. Yet to experience it firsthand now, he could feel that there was an invisible hand controlling this financial crisis. Someone seemed to be intentionally destroying Harbor City's economy. Harbor stocks can drop, such as the trend. There's no way anyone can save it now with how the bubble has been enlarged. But that doesn't mean Harbor City's economy can be destroyed, Jasper stated solemnly. He had intentions to invest in Harbor City, for its future development would undoubtedly bring unimaginable profits in return. As such, how could he let someone destroy Harbor City's economy? Harbor City must not be destroyed. Chapter 182. While the market was put on hold for lunch break, it gave a breather to every person in Harbor City who had been shrouded by gloomy clouds. Just then, people suddenly realized that this storm had not come without warning. In the United States across the ocean, a similar situation was occurring. The entire dot-com bubble was being popped worldwide. It had originated from the United States and slowly spread to Europe and Terra. Sweeping across the entire world, every stock market in every country and region was affected. Everyone who entered the stock market with high prices now had to pay a tragic price for their impulsive decisions. Almost $1 trillion had been lost in the global stock market on the first trading day the bubble popped. A flood of reports had brought the latest news to citizens of Harbor City, and the readers felt their scalps tingle in fear. Harbor City had not fully recovered from the financial tsunami attack 3 years ago, and here they were with the popping of the dot-com bubble. Countless people had grown gray hairs overnight because of this. With such unprecedented chaos happening in the background, all sorts of monsters and devils began to lurk. Some so-called stock review experts on the economic channels were frantically advocating how the current crisis was merely a temporary adjustment, and that everyone should hold their defenses so that they would not spread and create more panic. As if anyone was willing to listen to them at this point. Watching the stock prices drop by the minute and names of shares lining up at the limit down, everyone was worried that they would lose the money they had invested into the market. People were gloomy, and they began to think of how they could extract themselves from the situation. No matter how the outside world thought of and understood the situation, Jasper followed Zachary and Michael back to the living room that was their battleground after lunch. Say, Uncle Law, if Harbor City's economy really faces irreversible losses, will the rich families of Harbor City save the city? Jasper asked. Zachary replied without hesitation. Yes, or at least, most of us will. It's just like the economic crisis 3 years ago. Most of Harbor City's rich businessmen teamed up to defend against the invasion of Western investors. Harbor City is our home, after all, and no one is excluded. If Harbor City's economy is destroyed, then we rich families will also have nothing to rely on. Balancing the pros and cons, I think most people would be able to tell which is more important. Zachary's words had given Jasper something to think about. Let's see how it goes first. Jasper sighed. Despite Zachary promising him, Jasper could not help but think that there was more to this incident. If the mysterious force's target was Harbor City's economy, then it did not make sense for them to ignore the strength of Harbor City's wealthy families. The biggest problem now was that the enemy was in the dark. Jasper did not have enough leads to go on. However, Jasper had his advantages as well. His biggest one being the same as his opponent's, a hidden identity. His only solace was that his opponent did not know enough about himself either. That afternoon, the market opened again on time. Just as Jasper had expected, after the short lunch break, bullish funds were gathered together and the battle began to focus on a few representative stocks. Since it had just been a few minutes since the market reopened, both sides were still trading back and forth. Such had given countless investors hope and reignited their trust in the market. However, people in the industry like Jasper knew that this was merely a ray of light before death befell. As expected, 10 minutes after the market reopened, there seemed to be no end to the funds from the short position. The bullish people could not hold it up anymore, and their line of defense fell again. This time it was a rapid drop. The Hansel Index had instantly fallen by 500 points. Steady flowing water in a river had suddenly turned into a waterfall that plummeted off the cliff. It sprayed everywhere like an avalanche, and no one could stop the attack from the short position. The market crashed. Jasper suddenly spoke, staring at the spectacular sight of pure, tragic green on the screen. Almost every stock was dropping. Chapter 183. At that moment, calls were blowing up Zachary's phone. They were all from Harbor City's rich families, some of whom even held senior positions in the government of Harbor City. They had one goal. In face of Harbor City's current economic crisis that was so severe, the rich were frantic and lost. They needed to communicate a plan. As the wealthy held the life of Harbor City's economy in their hands, they were the only ones with the power to turn the tides at such a time. Even Michael had received similar phone calls. Both Zachary and Michael were torn between feeling ecstatic and sorrowful. For the bigger dip the stock market took, the more they earned. Yet letting it continue to drop was no different than killing the goose that laid golden eggs. Not to mention that the Law family's prestigious image would be destroyed if the outside world came to know about the situation. Not only are the wealthy families frantic, but even the government of Harbor City is urging for action too, Jasper. They need to discuss a plan to save the city. What's your say in this? Zachary had begun to see Jasper as an equal, instead of someone from the younger generation, before he knew it. Otherwise, Zachary would not ask Jasper for his opinion on something so crucial. Saving them goes without saying, Jasper replied with certainty. Even Michael could tell. Harbor City's economy is a base. It can drop, but it must not be destroyed. Jasper glanced at the stock market that continued to fall without restraint. Harbor City currently had around 1,300 stocks on the market, and more than 900 of them had reached the limit down. With the way things were going, at least 1,000 stocks would reach the limit down before the market closed this evening. This was a situation that Harbor Stocks had never encountered since its first opening. To Jasper, Harbor City would turn to be one of his biggest golden cash cows, leading to the burst of growth in his wealth in the future. As such, how would he allow others to destroy this cow of his? That was no different from getting sacked. Logically and emotionally speaking, Jasper would not let such a thing occur. Zachary nodded. Michael and I will talk to them tomorrow. More than 1,000 stocks have reached the limit down. Zach's voice suddenly rang out. Jasper and the other two turned to look. The scene that was talked about by countless people in his past life had finally appeared. On the limit down, the number of company stocks, 1,001. Like some sort of signal, the Hansel Index's defenses completely fell and dropped by more than 1,000 points. If one were to look at the market for Harbor Stocks right now, all the stocks they would be able to see were gathered at the limit down, and the entire screen before them would be filled with tragic light green lines. Profit report, Jasper demanded. Hansel Index closed at 8,700 points. Total account balance amounts to 45 billion, a total profit of 30 billion. 15 billion in capital had brought them 30 billion worth of profit. While everyone had expected it, their hearts could not help but shudder as Zach announced the figure. Zachary wore an expression of utter shock. Despite being a hero in the business world, he could not stop his heart from shaking in excitement. Is this the capital market? Earring 30 billion worth of profit in a day. Chapter 184. Popping of the dot-com bubble. Harbor Stocks drops violently by 10,000 points. Hundreds of billion Harbor dollars lost. Financial tsunami tragedy 3 years ago sweeps Harbor City again. Harbor City's economy in danger. Citizens ask what now. Countless news articles had spread throughout Harbor City that night. Almost every citizen was affected by the crisis. Switching on the television, every channel was reporting today's economic crisis. What truly chilled the hearts of civilians was that the boss of Carefree Net, an internet company on the stock market, had gone bankrupt and proceeded to kill himself and his kids by jumping from the rooftop. A true tragedy. Sorrow and fright could be seen everywhere in Harbor City. Meanwhile, a joyful party was held in a rural and safe villa somewhere in Harbor City. In these few years, I've never been as happy as I am today. Bob raised his wine glass and clinked it with Kennedy's with a smile on his face as he spoke. Kennedy smiled and replied, "Yeah. We earned almost 10 billion today. What's better than earning money? But something still feels weird to me." Bob rubbed his chin and explained, "According to our predictions, we knew that Harbor Stocks were bound to have a violent drop, but we never expected them to drop like this. It's too exaggerated. I almost got a shock with the Hansel Index dropping 10,000 points in just one day. Just our funds alone wouldn't have gotten us this result." Bob frowned and voiced out. Kennedy seemed to be in thought as well. "I realized it this afternoon as well. There's got to be another entity in the market aside from us, and their funds are not in any way lesser than ours. They've taken the bearish stand too, and if I had to guess, I'd say they have prepared at least tens of billions of funds." "Who do you think it is?" Bob asked sullenly. "I don't know, but it probably isn't Harbor City's local forces." Kennedy gave his own deductions. Just then, Rogers descended the villa's stairs with a relaxed expression and turned to Kennedy. "Quantum Fund's headquarters are very happy with our results, my friends. Wall Street's investors have largely profited too. Shouldn't all this good news be celebrated?" Unable to disagree, Kennedy and Bob nodded with a smile. Then, they told him of their suspicions. Rogers frowned, but his expression was not one of concern. "Perhaps Europe's other capitals were sold, or it may even be one of your Summerland's neighbors. But I can confirm that the capital wasn't from Wall Street. Keep an eye out tomorrow. We'll watch out for their next course of action," Rogers replied plainly. Bob hesitated before he spoke. "Mr. Rogers, our original plan was to knock the Hansel Index down by 10,000 points in 3 days. But it's only the first day, and the Hansel Index has already dropped 9,000 points. If this goes on, The government of Harbor City and the other rich families will team up to help. Kennedy interrupted. I already received their calls today, saying that the four main families should come up with a plan and publicize it, then team up with the other wealthy families to save the city. Rogers smiled playfully. It's a shame that they don't know that among Harbor City's four main rich families, you're egging for Harbor stocks to drop. Kennedy replied plainly. Still, you can't let them find out, or at least, not yet. Otherwise, that's goodbye to my foothold in Harbor City. Chapter 185. The Langdons' business has already started moving out of Harbor City, hasn't it? You're everywhere in Southeast Terra. So what are you afraid of? Rogers did not care. But there's nothing wrong with you going. At least then we'll get some insight on how Harbor City's four major families plan to save the city. With intel on our side, how will they ever win us? Rogers stated plainly. Rogers clapped Kennedy's shoulder when he took notice of the other's calm expression. There's a saying in the United States that capital only makes friends with winners, Langdon. Harbor City's still too small, not to mention that it has already returned to its previous state now. You have to know that the West is where true heaven exists for people like you. Kennedy smiled. I know. We will always be friends with Quantum Funds. Original content from noveldrama.org. Rogers laughed aloud. Of course, as one of its founders, I can promise you that Quantum Funds will always be willing to be friends with intelligent people like you. The night slowly darkened, and Zachary had much to do. In addition to the shock the stock market had suffered, people were very volatile right now. That was why he left the house after the market closed. It was especially in times like this that celebrities like Zachary and Michael became busier, for most people expected the rich to provide them with rescue measures. Meanwhile, their companies also needed to show their presence to calm the civilians' hearts. Jasper, on the other hand, now had a lot of free time. Watching the situation with the United States stock market, Jasper realized that its development was fundamentally different from his past life. Perhaps it was his participation in Harbor stocks, but the strength and speed of this storm had been greatly increased. Harbor stocks had only dropped 10,000 points 3 days after the storm began in his past life, yet it had dropped more than 9,000 points in one day this time. Today's daily decline had hit an all-time high. It was the first time for any stock market worldwide to drop 10,000 points in one day. The night was cold, and Jasper pondered over tomorrow's plan. Anna had walked over before Jasper realized. She said to him, You haven't been resting well these past few days. Won't you take the time to give yourself a break? I'm not actually that tired. Plus, there are a lot of things that I haven't planned yet, Jasper replied with a smile. Anna sighed. Bystanders only see how brightly successful people shine, yet not many of them know that success has never come easy to begin with. That's the idea. You'll have to put in the effort if you want to reap rewards. Jasper agreed. Anna gave it some thought before she suddenly invited Jasper, seeing as he did not have the intention to rest. How about we take a walk around Victoria Harbor? Jasper was shocked. Now? What? Are you afraid I'll sell you off? Anna joked. I told you when you first arrived in Harbor City, didn't I? That I'll be your tour guide and bring you around Victoria Harbor? You've already been in Harbor City for so long, and you still haven't stepped foot there yet. Jasper smiled. All right, let's go then. I'll take the chance to relax. The two walked to the garage together, tacitly choosing to ignore Henry's car with large headlights this time. Sitting in Anna's Porsche 911, Jasper felt his nerves unwind after the past few days of accumulated stress as he watched Harbor City's night view zoom past him. Are you saving the city tomorrow? Anna asked while driving. Jasper thought about it and replied, As a businessman, my main focus is business. Everything else is secondary to me. That's why I did what I did today. But being a businessman means you have to look at the bigger picture. And the crashing of Harbor City's stock market is bad news to me and the whole Harbor City. Chapter 186. But whether I do save the city or not tomorrow will depend on how things end up going. Anna fell into deep thought. You mean that if the trend continues and the market crashes, then you won't help? But if this is caused by someone and they're secretly trying to increase the severity of this economic crisis, you'll help? Jasper smiled. Smart. There's no way I'd be able to fight the trend of the dot-com bubble popping no matter how rich I become. So the only way to earn money now is to go with the flow. Fighting against the trend is only something idiots would do. But if someone from the outside is putting their capital in, that means someone's trying to crush Harbor City's economy, and that's a man-made disaster, not a natural one. Then I have to act. Not to mention that the government of Harbor City and the city's rich families will act even if I don't do anything. By then, I'll still just go with the flow. As they spoke, the two arrived at Victoria Harbor. Anna pulled the car to a stop, and the two walked on the pedestrian bridge side by side like many ordinary couples here. Harbor City was overpopulated, so most roads were rather crowded. As such, pedestrian bridges had been integrated into one of Harbor City's unique scenery. It was getting late, but an international metropolis like Harbor City hardly ever grew deserted. People came and went on the pedestrian bridge, most of them talking about what had happened on the stock markets today. People strode quickly around them with sullen expressions on their faces. As Jasper and Anna chatted and walked around Victoria Harbor with smiles on their faces, Mitch and Zane were currently joyfully clinking glasses at an open bar. Today sure was great, young Master Langdon. Had you not shown me the way to earn money and told me to take the bearish stand for Harbor stocks, I wouldn't have been able to earn tens of millions today. Zane thanked Mitch elatedly. Mitch merely smiled softly at Zane's praise. It's nothing. Keep working for me, and I can promise you'll be earning big bucks in the future. This is only the beginning. Looking at those aggrieved expressions those people wore just makes me want to laugh. What do they know about stocks? They had it coming for losing. Zane leaned against the chair comfortably and enjoyed the sea breeze. How much did you earn today, young Master Langdon? Mitch's lips quirked upward as he lifted 2 fingers. 200 million? Zane exclaimed. Mitch burst out in laughter. Look at you. So unpromising. It's just 200 million. That's nothing. I'm one of Harbor City's well-known investing masters, after all. I could tell that something was up when I looked at the market's big picture. So I prepared my funds and chose to take the bearish stand before it was too late. There's only more money to be made from now on. Zane replied in admiration. You sure are good at this, young Master Langdon. Halfway through his praise, Zane's eyes suddenly widened. Looking over in the other direction, he roared, What the hell? Look at those two, young Master Langdon. It's Jasper, that country bumpkin, and Anna. Hearing Zane, Mitch immediately snapped his head over to see a couple walking by the harbor not too far away, approaching their direction. While the lighting around them was dim, Mitch could easily tell the two's identities. Motherf asterisk Kerr. It really is that country bumpkin and Anna. Mitch huffed enviously. He had been chasing after Anna for quite a few years already. Yet every time she saw him, she would have a dark expression on her face. How could she possibly take strolls with him? He thought about himself, how he was still a member of one of the 4 major rich families in Harbor City with equal footing as the Law family. However, Annie had never even looked his way. Meanwhile, Jasper, a country bumpkin from mainland, was deeply favored by her. Mitch scoffed and stood up when he saw Jasper, that new distaste adding to his old resentment. Come on, let's go talk. Jasper was chatting and laughing with Anna when a sharp voice sounded not too far away. Hey, isn't this a mainland cockroach? Chapter 187. Zane had both his hands in his pant pockets as he scoffed at Jasper and spoke. What? Haven't seen a night view as beautiful as Harbor City's before? That must be why you're here, right? To learn more about the world. Don't say that. Mitch glared at Jasper and spoke wittily. That's a humiliation to cockroaches. People like him should be called a mangy dog. After all, it wasn't easy climbing up a tree like the Law family. He looks so proud of himself. It's like he can't wait to wag his tail and please his master. Zane broke out into a laugh and agreed. You're right, young Master Langdon. He really is just a mangy dog. Jasper could not help but feel like he was being stalked by Zane and Mitch. Needless to say, the amount of hatred, new and old, between them had gotten beyond the point of mitigation. Should have checked my horoscope today, before I left the house. Jasper shook his head. Shouldn't we be the ones saying this? Zane scoffed. What misfortune to see a dog like you the moment I leave my house. You got to be understanding, too. After all, mainland is hardly as urbanized as Harbor City. At least he'll have something to gloat to his friends back in mainland if he has walked around Victoria Harbor. Mitch mocked plainly. With that, Mitch then turned to Anna. How could you come out for a walk with someone like this, Anna? What about your dignity if this news gets spread? Anna had long felt annoyed when it came to Mitch, so she replied to his words coldly. Who are you to control who I take walks with? And watch your attitude, the two of you. You disgust me. I disgust you? Mitch started laughing, feeling infuriated as he pointed at Jasper. It's people like him who schemes and tries to flatter his way into your family who's disgusting here. What gave you the idea that he's flattering his way into my family? Anna asked him politely. Just look at him. It's obvious, isn't it? Mitch spoke with certainty. You'll get the F***CK out of Harbor City if you still see yourself as a man. Jasper, leave Anna alone, or we'll never have an ounce of respect for you. How does your respecting me or not affect me? Jasper asked. Mitch scoffed and replied wretchedly. You really are just a mangy dog. Let's go, Jasper. Anna had enough of the two's faces and pulled Jasper away to leave. Stand there. Mitch blocked the duo's path and sneered at Jasper. I thought you were capable, country bumpkin, but all you're doing now is hiding between a girl's legs and running away. Exactly, Miss Law. I'd think carefully if I were you. Young Master Langdon easily earned $200 million from the stock market today. What about that country bumpkin next to you? Can he do that? Zane sneered. Mitch was pleased with what Zane had said and huffed his chest as he spoke with an intentionally nonchalant tone. It's just $200 million. I could already tell from the trend that Harbor Stocks Index would plummet. That's why I prepared money and opened a position for a bearish stand. Earning just that bit of money was easy peasy. With that, Mitch turned to Jasper and snickered. I'd F***CK off soon if I were you. You mainland country bumpkin. Harbor City isn't a place for losers like you. At that, Jasper merely chuckled in disagreement. Is $200 million a lot of money? Chapter 188. Mitch burst out laughing and said while laughing, What did I just hear? $200 million is not a lot. But can you make so much? You're just lucky, and you only made some money from shady businesses, so how can you compare to me? I made my money with my own ability. Yeah, you're just a country bumpkin, and you dare to compare with young Master Langdon? You're a humiliation to all of us with the last name starting with L. Zane chuckled coldly and said at one side, I'm sorry, I think I'm going to disappoint you guys. I did use my luck to make money, but my luck has been great so far. From stock speculation to futures, I rarely fail. I think I made a few billion in just a few months. Jasper shrugged and looked at the two of them, who widened their eyes after they heard him saying that. He chuckled lightly. Right? How much did you say you made? $200 million? You just made the scraps from what I made. So I guess that's just my pocket money. Mitch and Zane felt a buzz in their heads, and they almost shut down. Pocket money? The rich children of the rich families in Harbor City did not even dare to say $200 million was pocket money, and this country bumpkin from mainland had the balls to say this? Bullsh**T. Zane said sharply. Country bumpkin, you expect us to believe that you've made a few billion just from your words? You even made a few billion in a few months? I don't even have the guts to say this. Oh, do you think you are? Mitch, just because you can't make this much doesn't mean other people can't, Jasper said flatly. Mitch narrowed his eyes and looked at Jasper sinisterly. He chuckled coldly and said, Do you think I'm as easy to fool as a 3-year-old? How many $100 million of capital do you need to make a few billion in the stock market in such a short period? Have you calculated that? All 10 of your fingers won't be enough for you to count that. Whatever. Do you think I care whether you believe me or not? Jasper sneered. Mitch was immediately speechless, and he felt extremely terrible. It was because he believed that Jasper was able to make some money in the stock market by seizing every opportunity. After he had this thought, Mitch felt so jealous and pissed that it felt as if he had bugs gnawing on his heart. Then, he looked at Anna, who was standing next to him. Mitch could only feel that Jasper had defeated him in the business world and also relationship-wise. Now he felt that he was the country bumpkin instead. How amazing you are! Mitch smiled coldly while gritting his teeth. However, don't feel too pleased with yourself, country bumpkin. There'll be a time when you'll cry. Young Master Langdon, have you forgotten about our bet last time? You lost $100 million to me. And it was thanks to that I was able to bid on a pink diamond that's worth a few $100 million at the charity party. Jasper looked at Mitch and Zane. He said indifferently, "Plus, Mr. Lancaster, I almost bought your family's company last time, and in the end, your father had to show up and give me $1 billion. Have you guys already forgotten about that?" After they heard this, their faces turned green. There was a hint of anger in their eyes, and their faces looked sinister. Especially Zane. When he remembered what had happened last time, he did not even know what to say. "Damn you! Do you think you're all that just because you seized every opportunity and defeated me? Don't forget that the stock market can make someone get rich in one night, but can also make someone lose everything in one night." Mitch glared at Jasper malevolently. He chuckled coldly and said, "Oomph, you just defeated me by 100 million. I can earn it back with just a turn of my hand. Plus, I can make even more in the future. Country bumpkin, it's okay for you to come here to make money. If you're tactful, I can take you along to make more with me. As long as you leave Anna and get out of Harbor City after you make your money, I'll be willing to let you tag along. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, so don't blame me for not giving you this chance." Jasper smiled. "After you let me tag along, then we'll watch Harbor stocks continue plummeting, yeah? This will just make things worse in a bad situation. If the economy in Harbor City collapses, no one can escape unscathed in a great disaster. You son of a b****sh. Stop saying it like you're so high and mighty. Aren't you involved in the stock market to make money?" Mitch felt disgusted when he saw Jasper acting so pretentious. He looked at Anna. "Anna, did you see that? He didn't come here to make money. He's obviously putting on an act for you by being so full of justice. It's so that you'll fall for his tricks. Do you think Jasper is on the same level as you guys?" Anna suddenly said. She could not stand this anymore, so she opened her mouth and berated. Chapter 189. When Mitch saw Anna siding with Jasper, he felt the fire of anger and jealousy burning in his chest. His eyes were filled with rage. "Anna, I know you're pure-hearted, but don't be fooled by him. Do you think he got close to the laws with no ulterior motives?" Anna gritted her teeth with anger. She wanted to tell them that Jasper was making a lot of money just from the short sale. Due to the general trend, the market of Harbor stocks would plummet. He could not fight the general trend, and Harbor stocks would fall no matter if he did or not. However, this was the secret between the laws and Jasper, so Anna could not tell them everything. She looked at Mitch and Zane before saying coldly, "Mitch, do you know what Jasper said to me just now? We're talking about how we're going to save the crisis of Harbor stocks and not how to continue to suck the blood of the citizens of Harbor City dry. As someone from a rich family, don't you ever think about the economy of Harbor City? A market rescue?" Mitch almost burst out laughing. "Jasper?" Mitch pointed at Jasper's nose and was struggling to breathe due to all the laughing. "This is the burst of the dot-com bubble. Do you know what it means by the bubble bursting? You just made some money in the stock market because you got King lucky. Do you seriously think you're able to predict and understand everything? Damn, this is a King global financial crisis, and you want to do a market rescue? You, a country bumpkin from mainland? I'm going to die from laughter. Harbor stocks are worth a few $1 trillion. They fell 10,000 points today, and the Langdons can't even save this. You can still be a poser back in mainland with your coins. Aren't you scared that I'll laugh my head off from you boasting shamelessly in Harbor City?" Jasper looked at Mitch sympathetically and said flatly, "Continue laughing then. Laugh more. I hope you can laugh for a few more days." Mitch deliberately laughed even louder. "I'm going to keep laughing, and I'll laugh at you every day. What can a country bumpkin like you do to me? A market rescue? F***CK your market rescue, and F***CK you. You're so pretentious that your head is in outer space. What do you even have? You're just a country bumpkin from mainland, and you want to rescue Harbor stocks? You might not be afraid to lose your image, but aren't you afraid of embarrassing the laws? Anna, are you willing to let the laws lose their image because of this country bumpkin from mainland? I think you should tell him to get lost as soon as he can. You're so senseless." After Anna said that frigidly, she grabbed Jasper and said, "Jasper, let's go. We have nothing to say to this lunatic." Jasper patted Anna's hand and said to Mitch, "I'll remember your laughing face. I hope you can still laugh as foolishly as you are now, the next time we see each other. The one who gets the last laugh is the winner, no? After he said that, Jasper left slowly with Anna. Mitch watched as Jasper and Anna's figures walked farther and farther away. The smile on his face slowly disappeared, and what was left was a distorted look filled with malevolence. Young Master Langdon, I want to kill that country bumpkin so badly, Zane said through gritted teeth. I want to do it more than you. Mitch snorted and said loftily, just wait. The time will come when he'll die. Let's just allow him to feel pleased with himself for now. Zane pondered for a while and asked. He said he made a few billion from the stock market and wants to rescue the market. Do you think he's serious? Mitch gritted his teeth and chuckled coldly. He said, I think he did make some money, but I'm sure it's not as much as a few billion. Just listen to him talk big. And he even wants to save the market? He must be dreaming. Mitch remembered the news his father had talked about on a call while he was standing in front of the door of his study. He felt his heart burning up. He knew that his father was probably doing something major, and it was related to the financial crisis. However, Mitch would not tell anyone about this secret. When he thought about this, he scoffed. Jasper, even if you're all that, but can you do better than the Langdons? Tomorrow, let's take out all of our savings for a short sale. We'll use this once-in-a-lifetime chance to get rich overnight. Zane was shocked when he heard this. He said, all of our savings? Isn't this a little risky? What are you scared of? Mitch glared at Zane. Just do as I say. I have a source, and I got some information that the financial crisis this time won't be so simple. It's still early, and that country bumpkin wants to go against me. After I make enough money, I'll kill him. Zane thought about it and said through gritted teeth, all right, I'll do as you say. I'll get the money tomorrow. Chapter 190. After leaving Victoria Harbor, because of Mitch and his gang, their moods were destroyed, so they went straight home. Tonight, a lot of people in Harbor City could not sleep. This entire city fell into a dense cloud of dismal. However, Jasper got himself a rare good night's sleep. He had not had the chance to rest for the past few days because of the time difference and having to follow up on the stock market in the United States. He had to be prepared for the burst of the dot-com bubble at any time. Now, the bubble had burst and the storm had arrived in Harbor City. Jasper slept soundly tonight, and he only woke up because of the blaring alarm clock the next morning. After washing up and eating some breakfast, he walked to the living room. At this moment, Zach and his team were already in position. When they saw Jasper, everyone got up enthusiastically and greeted him. Due to the exceptional results yesterday, Jasper was now the true stock god in their hearts. As such, even if Jasper told them the sun was square, they would lift their heads to look at it seriously. My dad as well as Mr. Lane and his gang have gone to Clark Duval. I think they're discussing the countermeasure for dealing with this. When Anna saw Jasper walking over, she walked over to him and said, after nodding, Jasper said, we should have news by afternoon. While he was saying that, the trading had commenced. At the same time, the trading commencement of Harbor stocks had attracted the attention of a lot of people. At this moment, the entire Harbor City went silent. Everyone was watching the changing of Harbor stocks. It was not out of everyone's expectations. After the commencement, the stocks started to plummet wildly. The plummet yesterday was enough to make Harbor City famous around the world, but it was as if that was not enough. The wealth and riches of Harbor City were evaporating amidst the bitter plummet. Now, even the most impulsive investors were silenced. Everyone looked as if they were numb. Everyone's faces were as gray as ash. They could only watch as Harbor stocks continued to plummet. Everyone's moods were like the plummeting numbers. They felt as if they were falling down a cliff, and they could never reach the bottom. The Hansel Index fell by 800 points after the commencement, and it's reaching the gateway of 8,000 points. Zach was announcing the situation of the market. At this moment, everyone was extremely nervous and felt strange in their hearts. Jasper looked at the time on the screen. It had only been 30 seconds since the commencement. They had a slump of 800 points in only 30 seconds. It seemed that this mysterious hand would not be satisfied if it did not completely destroy Harbor City. There's another 2 billion from a put option short seller. The Hansel Index dropped by another 180 points. It's now at 7,813 points. Zach's voice sounded again. Jasper furrowed his brows tightly. That mysterious fund finally bared its fangs after failing to control itself. Give up on the shorts we have now. Let's hedge this $2 billion, Jasper ordered. Zach was stumped for words. The more the Hansel Index fell, the more money the party that was waiting for it to drop would make. However, Jasper was now asking them to hedge the other party while facing the destruction of the economy of harbor stocks. Hedging meant that Jasper would buy what the other party sold. The more the other party sold, the more Jasper would buy. That way, there would be 2 successful transactions, and it would stop the plummeting Hansel Index from dipping even more. There was another name for it, and it was called the protection of the market. Jasper was going to protect the market of harbor stocks. However, a second later, Zach quickly realized this was not the time to space out. Hence, he quickly did what Jasper told him to do. At the same time, Zach started to feel a surge in his heart. Chapter 191. To Jasper, he wanted to protect Harbor City's economy, even if it meant giving up the profits he already had in his hands. What kind of mindset was this? Even though they had made a lot of money these 2 days, and Zach could get a hefty sum of money, he and his team were from Harbor City after all. Zach would still feel a little uncomfortable when he watched the economy of his home being plundered and robbed by someone else. In addition to that, they were also sucking the blood of the citizens and taking away the results their economy had gained after so many years. However, he was just someone holding on to a job. He did not have the ability, and his words would not amount to anything, so it would be impossible for him to do anything. However, now Jasper's order felt like a cardiac stimulant to him. Mr. Lane is a hero, Zach murmured to himself in his heart. Jasper's expression was serious. His main issue was that someone else was digging this farmland that was Harbor City, and he could not tolerate this. This farmland would be able to bring him a lot of opportunities to make money in the future. The measly profits that he was letting go now would be able to get him a wider space to grow in the future. He would need to be far-sighted if he wanted to do business. He would not have a future if he kept staring at those tiny profits in front of him. Now, the Hansel Index had dropped to 8,000 points. Its limit would be this even if Jasper did not do anything. If it continued to lose another 1,000 points and reach 7,000, the Harbor City government would take strong action, and those millionaires would also start to inject funds. To Jasper, 90% of the money he could make was already in his pocket. As for the remaining 10%, it would be a worthy trade if it would be able to give Harbor City a rapidly developing economy in the next 20 years. In Harbor Stock's trading center, everyone lost all of their hopes when they saw the $2 billion being shown on the screen. To them, Harbor stocks would continue to plummet this morning as they had yesterday. They would continue to bomb. Oh no, oh no. This is the same as the financial crisis 3 years ago. It's exactly the same. An old stock investor wailed in front of the trading hall with tears in his eyes. Everyone around him was silent, and they all had despair on their faces. However, when despair was looming over everyone, a buy order of $2 billion appeared in the list of trading without any warning signs. In the next second, a buying order and a selling order were hedging. The Hansel Index miraculously stabled at 7,813 points and did not drop anymore. What's going on? Did someone eat the order of $2 billion? Someone yelled loudly. This loud voice attracted everyone's attention. When they realized what they were seeing was not an illusion, someone yelled, "Did the 4 wealthy families do something? Maybe the government of Harbor City injected the emergency funds into the market." Among the commotion, inside Law Manor that was more than 10 kilometers away. There are 15 stock traders, and everyone is using their own accounts to display the order they bought with 100 million. These 15 orders will be the tool for us to protect the market and fight back. Jasper took a sip of the spring tea Anna handed him as he stared at the screen and ordered. Inside the living room, all of the stock traders were so excited that their faces were red. None of them would expect to be in the team of heroes saving Harbor stocks one day. Some things were more important than making money in one's life. Harbor City was their home, and they did not want to watch as their home got destroyed. At this moment, everyone was working faster and with more excitement than when they were furiously making money. In the next second, an order occupied a line of information. Then, 15 lines of information and 15 purchase orders appeared in the trading list of Harbor stocks. 15 orders. 15 purchasing information. All of them were worth 100 million. They were displayed dazzlingly and evidently on the screen, occupying the buying list that had been empty for a day and a half. The purchasing order of 1.5 billion was like a soundless and shapeless thing, but at that moment, it was a message that everyone in Harbor City could understand as it resounded in everyone's hearts. When you're in despair and when you're feeling helpless, someone is still protecting and saving the economy of Harbor City. At this moment, in another secluded villa on the other side of Harbor City, Bob furrowed his brows tightly. Someone's causing trouble. Chapter 192. When the 15 orders totaled 1.5 billion were listed on the trading list, Bob could tell something was wrong. Someone wanted to protect the market. It was because Kennedy was at the internal meeting of the 4 wealthy families. He could not be absent from this important meeting with his current status. If not, his entire plan would be exposed and they would be finished. As such, Bob was the one controlling the situation. However, they did not expect that someone would do something at this moment. Were the 4 wealthy families and the government of Harbor City doing something to save the city? Impossible. They would not be so fast. Mr. Lancaster, someone devoured the order we sold for 2 billion earlier in the blink of an eye. Now, they're listing out these 15 orders, and it's clear that they're declaring war with us. The manager who was leading the stock traders said, "It doesn't matter who it is. They're just overrating themselves and attempting something impossible." Bob thought for a while before chuckling coldly. He ordered, "Take them down. Don't give them any hope." After Bob gave out that order, the stock traders started to do their things. In the blink of an eye, the 1.5 billion order was swept clean. Continue selling. I want the Hansel Index to drop until 7,000 points this morning. Bob's haughty voice reverberated in the villa. He was enjoying the feeling of being full of them. When Kennedy was here, his words were nothing compared to his. However, it was different now. He was the boss here, and with one sentence, he was able to cause the rise and fall of Harbor stocks. He was also able to control the fall of Harbor stocks according to his wishes. This feeling was even more addictive than doing drugs. "Mr. Lane, the other party has swept our orders clean. We're still selling shorts and watching it drop." When Jasper heard Zach's voice, he stayed silent for a while. A moment later, he ordered, Take as many as they have. We have to maintain the Hansel Index at 7,810 points. After Jasper's order, Zach started to instruct the stock traders. Immediately, Jasper and Bob's funds were competing against each other on Harbor stocks. The funds that were worth more than 10 billion did not cause any ripples when they were going against each other. However, these funds worth more than $10 billion would dictate the fate of Harbor stocks this morning before the market closed. "Tell me the situation of the funds in our account," Jasper said while looking at the market without blinking. "For now, we have about 89.6 billion in our account." When Jasper heard what Zach said, he nodded. His capital was 40 billion. He had made almost 50 billion from yesterday and today. Since he had such a huge amount of funds in his hands, he was naturally confident. "Continue to list out purchase orders for a total of 3 billion. I want the Hansel Index to rise 10 more points. B****. Bob stared gloomily at the changes in the market. It had only been half an hour, and he had already put in almost $5 billion. However, it was as if the other party's funds were bottomless. The other party would put in as much as they put in. After spending $5 billion, not only did the Hansel Index not fall as he had predicted, it even stood firmly at 7,813 points. This figure was like a spell, and he could not get rid of it no matter how hard he tried. If Kennedy came back to this scene, he would certainly question Bob's ability. When Bob thought about this, his eyes darkened even more. F***ck. Who the hell is fooling with me? Bob muttered to himself sinisterly. At this moment, a 3 billion order crashed into Harbor stocks. "And Mr. Lancaster, should we take this down?" Even the blind would be able to see that Bob was in an extremely bad mood, so the manager asked in a small voice nervously. Chapter 193. Rubbish. If we don't take it down, then are we going to watch them raise the market? We'll all be finished if the Hansel Index increases, isn't it? Bob yelled angrily. and his saliva almost drenched the manager's face. "We can't let him raise the market." Bob's eyes were shining with a sinister glint. "Once the market is stable, or even has a glimpse of a rally, then those investors will think the time for bottom fishing is here. When they make a comeback, then we'll be in huge trouble." When Bob thought about this, he yelled fiercely, "Continue to smash the price. I refuse to believe that he has so much money to play with me." The parents of the four richest families were sitting together and discussing in Clark's house. "We can't watch Harbor stocks crash. I suggest all of us take out some funds. We have to stabilize the market." The ship king, who was also the head of the Boyles, said with a serious expression on his face, "You're right, but we don't even know who's the other party or how much funds they have. What if we fall into their trap, if we just do this blindly?" Kennedy said indifferently, "What should we do then? Are we just going to watch it happen and do nothing?" "Everyone out there is waiting for us to say something," Spencer Boyle said bluntly. "Please don't be impatient." Clark chuckled and turned his head to look at Zachary. He said, "Old man Law, what do you think?" Zachary had a calm expression on his face, and he said calmly, "I support the Boyles' opinion. As the four richest families, we have to be the examples. On the other hand, we have to communicate with the government as well. They can't just allow the economy of Harbor City to fall back." At this moment, Clark's secretary knocked on the door before coming in. She quickly said something to Clark. Clark made a noise of surprise that attracted the attention of the other three. After waving his hand to dismiss his secretary, Clark said profoundly, "I think someone's one step ahead of us." While he said that, Clark turned on the television and ordered someone to connect it to Harbor Stocks Market. Immediately, the situation of the market appeared on the television. Right now, it was 13 minutes to closing. The Hansel Index was stable at 7,820 points, and there were two large amounts of funds going at each other surrounding this point. "Is someone protecting the market?" Spencer said in surprise. Clark nodded and said, "My secretary told me while we were in the middle of the meeting there was an injection of funds, and the other party has been protecting the market since 7,813 points. They've been going at each other for the entire morning. Not only did the points not fall, it even increased by 7 points. Now, everyone out there is guessing who this person is. Nobody has any idea who's spending the money now," Clark said profoundly. At this moment, the expressions on Zachary and Kennedy's faces changed subtly. Of course, Zachary knew that the person who was protecting the market now was Jasper. There was a hint of comfort in his eyes. On the other hand, Kennedy was conflicted. He did not expect that Bob would be able to mess this up when he was out having a meeting. They had so many funds, but they still let the other party successfully protect the market. "Who's this person?" Kennedy asked quickly. He wanted to find out who this person was right now more than anyone. "No idea." Clark shook his head and said gleefully, "But since someone's ahead of us, then we can't hesitate anymore. If not, people will be disappointed." Everyone looked at each other and reached a mutual agreement. Even though Kennedy was extremely reluctant, he did not dare to show it. He could only say that he agreed with this while going against his wishes. After a while, the morning market closed. Bang! In the villa, Bob slammed down on the screen violently. He roared, "F***CK. Who is that person? Who among you can tell me why not only did you fail to make the points go down, but you even walked right into the other party's trap and lost a few hundred millions?" Chapter 194. The entire villa was quiet. At this moment, the stock traders wanted so badly to stop breathing. They were scared that once they made a squeak, Bob, who was in the middle of his rage, would take out his anger on them. Nobody dared to say a word, but everybody was disapproving of this in their hearts. "You're the one who ordered this, and you're the one who made all of the decisions. Now that you've fallen into the other party's trap, you're blaming the people who were working for you." Bob gasped for air loudly, staring at the market angrily and irritably. He was gritting his teeth tightly. Nobody knew what he was thinking about. At this moment, his phone rang. When he saw that it was from Kennedy, his face fell. However, he still decided to answer. "What's wrong with you? I handed you the power to command them, and you caused this mess. How do you expect me to explain this to Rogers?" Kennedy's dark voice sounded from the other end of the phone. Bob could feel a demonic fire surging from his stomach, but since he was terrified of Kennedy's power and influence, he suppressed his displeasure tenaciously. He said, "The other party is too sly. I didn't expect this to happen." "That's enough. Stop talking." Kennedy interrupted Bob's sentence. "We've talked about this just now, and we're on the way to the government of Harbor City. We plan to host a press conference with the government at noon. The four rich families will take out $10 billion each. With the market rescue funds from the government and the other millionaires, we might be able to get about $100 billion from market rescue funds. The $100 billion will be injected into the stock market for market rescue in the afternoon. I'll come back with Rogers before the market commences in the afternoon. Be more low profile later. If you make Rogers think you're a useless piece of trash, I won't be able to save you, nor will I want to save you." After Bob heard that, he felt fear and trepidation in his heart. He said, "$100 billion? How are we going to play this after the funds come in?" Kennedy scoffed and said, "Quantum Fund has not made a move yet. Why do you think Rogers and his gang are staying in Harbor City? We'll just wait for them to inject the funds into the market. When that happens, we won't know for sure if they're rescuing the market or sending themselves to their deaths." During lunch, Jasper, Anna, and Henry were eating while watching the television. Showing on the television was the live broadcast of the government's press conference. The four rich families in combination with the government are declaring that the economy of Harbor City is the result of every citizen in Harbor City, and they won't allow anyone to tarnish this. This afternoon, the four rich families, the other millionaires in Harbor City, and the government has an overall plan to raise $100 billion in funds to rescue the market. A series of news proved that the government had started doing something. Henry turned his head to look at Jasper. He said, "You're pretty accurate. The government did release a statement at noon. You even got the $100 billion correct. Are you a god?" When Henry remembered how Jasper had said the government would release a statement before lunch about rescuing the market with $100 billion in funds, and how he had not believed him, Henry felt a little awkward. "Your dad called and told me. I was just repeating what he said. So how would I be wrong?" Jasper shrugged. He did not mind Henry's murderous gaze after he flew into a rage out of humiliation. A moment later, he stared blankly at him. "Damn it, you're fooling me," Henry yelled in displeasure. After spending some time with him, Henry could finally predict Jasper's temper. He looked mature and earnest, unlike anyone who was the same age as him. However, he was a pretty easygoing person and was able to take a joke. The relationship between the two of them was much better than before. Plus, Henry was genuinely impressed with Jasper, so his sense of superiority of being the son of the #1 millionaire in Harbor City had long been gone. Chapter 195. As such, Henry was able to say anything he wanted and according to his wishes. Jasper took some soup for himself and did not forget to also take some for Anna, who was beside him. The latter reacted shyly to what he was doing. Jasper said to Henry, "Let me quiz you. If you were me, what should you do this afternoon?" Henry was stumped for words. He bit his fork and fell in a deep thought. When Anna was about to say something, she saw Jasper smiling and shaking his head at her. Immediately, Anna fell quiet. She was also looking at her ignorant and incompetent brother with interest. She wanted to see what strategy he would blurt out. "Wait and see," Henry said probingly. The way he observed Jasper carefully, and the way he tried to guess if his answer was right or wrong, was exactly as if he was a pupil in class who just got called by the teacher to answer a question. However, what disappointed Henry was that he did not get anything from his observation. "Continue." Jasper ate some vegetables and said flatly, "Because I know we have about $100 billion in the morning, but we didn't make the other party lose out too much because it was just a trap you set to make them lose a few $100 million. A few $100 million is just a slap in the face compared to such a large amount of funds. It's far from being able to make him lose out too much." Henry felt that he had not killed his brain cells and operated his thoughts so violently after graduating from high school. He continued to stammer. "Plus, I remember you saying yesterday that the government will rescue the market, so the other party must be prepared because everything is according to their plans. So, we have to see what they'll do after the market rescue this afternoon." After listening to Henry, Jasper nodded under his expectant gaze and grinned. "Not bad. Good answer." "Yes." Henry snapped his finger and chortled arrogantly. His entire body was filled with complacent. Mr. Law stated that it was truly so difficult to get a compliment from Jasper's mouth. Anna looked at Henry in surprise. To be honest, she did not expect Henry to have this thought. Looking back at Jasper, Anna felt in her heart that this man was extremely magical. He could even educate an idiot like Henry, so what else could he not do? Hey, Anna, your brother is the one who did a good job. So why are you looking at him with such admiring eyes? Henry said in displeasure. I'm impressed by him because you did a good job. Half a month ago, you didn't even know what's a stock market index, Anna replied bluntly. Henry looked at Jasper in embarrassment. He was saying that he did not know whether he should say F***CKU to her. At this moment, Jasper's phone rang. It was from Zachary, who just attended the press conference. After a while, Jasper hung up the call and rubbed the space between his eyebrows. What's wrong? Anna asked in concern. Seems that we can't execute Henry's plan anymore, Jasper said helplessly. What? Henry looked over curiously. Your father sold me. Jasper looked as if he was complaining. He smiled bitterly and said, he recommended me to host the market rescue with a fund of 100 billion. He's asking me to rescue the market myself. Chapter 196. You be the host? Henry was completely stumped for words. Even though he knew Jasper had the ability to do so, this involved the economy of Harbor City, and his father was recommending him to conduct this. The more responsibility one had, the more honor one would get. If Jasper successfully conducted the market rescue, then he would cause a sensation in Harbor City. His status and position would be higher than his. However, if Jasper failed, not only would he need to bear the infamy, he would also affect the laws. At the side, Anna also looked as if she was in deep thought. On one hand, she supported Jasper, but on the other, she was worried that Jasper might fail. Of course, she wished that this man in front of her would succeed. However, the market rescue involved too many people, and if there was a slight mistake, then it would cause an incurable loss as well as huge trouble. Are you confident about this? Anna asked in a low voice. Someone has to do it. The laws have placed so much value in me so naturally. I don't wish to embarrass you. However, I've never conducted this kind of quibble worth a few hundred billion before. Jasper's expression looked solemn. After a while, a burst of light flashed across his eyes. However, I've said that I won't let anyone destroy Harbor City. On the other side, an office in the government of Harbor City. Are you guys crazy? A man in his 30s who looked as if he had an out-of-the-ordinary character yelled loudly. His face had turned green. His name was Jake Cullen, and he was an exceptional stock trader and investor from Wall Street. Inside the room, Zachary and another high-level official from the government of Harbor City, who was about the same age as him, were looking at him calmly. 2 years ago, I was the stock market genius in Wall Street. Now that I'm back in Harbor City, I've never failed after hosting more than a dozen trade wars in the stock market. Aside from me, who else in Harbor City is qualified to host this market rescue? Jake slammed his hand down on the table angrily as he glared at the people sitting in front of him with a dark face. Now, you're recommending a minor nobody from mainland to steal this mission from me? What is the meaning of this? The official glanced at Zachary, who had no expression on his face. He later chuckled and said, Mr. Cullen, don't be mad. Mr. Law must have his reasons to say this. Actually, the government of Harbor City was surprised and embarrassed at Zachary's suggestion. It was because in Harbor City, Jake was indeed the top of the top when it came to controlling the trade war in the stock market. No one had better qualifications than him. The government had planned to entrust him to host this market rescue worth 100 billion. However, the government had to take Zachary's suggestion into consideration as well. As such, that was why there was this scene in the office. Zachary knew who Jake was, but his expression did not show that. On the other hand, he said slowly, Everyone, firstly, I need to mention that this young man named Jasper is not an unknown nobody. He started out by depending on the stock market in mainland. He was the mysterious retail investor who defeated the capitalist big shots in the international crude oil futures market a few months ago. He was also the one who purchased Gladness Entertainment Movies and caused a stir in Harbor City a few days ago. Plus, he was also the one who tried hard to save the market this morning. While Zachary said that, he looked expressionlessly at Jake and the official. Next, this is not just my suggestion. This is also a suggestion made by my father to the higher-ups of the government. Jake and the officials still disapproved while listening to the first two statements, but when they heard that Jasper, who saved the market in the morning, was also recommended by Old Master Law, their expressions changed. The market rescue this morning had given the citizens of Harbor City a lot of confidence. When the hearts of the citizens wandered in this kind of economic crisis, it would be hard to assemble them again. It was because of Jasper's market rescue this morning the government had time to release the press statement at noon to strengthen the confidence of the citizens. It could be said that Jasper was already the hero of Harbor City with just the market rescue this morning and nothing else. Plus, with the recommendation of Old Master Law, even the higher-ups of the government had to attach some importance to him. Jake moved his lips. The reason he dared to slam down on Zachary's table just now was that the government officials supported him in doing the market rescue, so that was why he had the guts to be so arrogant. Chapter 197. However, he did feel a little guilty now after hearing Jasper's past achievements and how Old Master Law had already taken action. If that's the case, then I think Mr. Law's suggestion is reasonable. The official wiped the sweat from his forehead and thought of a compromise. Everyone is just trying to protect the economy of Harbor City, so there's no need to make this so tense. Why don't we let Jasper host the mission this time? However, Jake, as the representative of the government, you should go along. If Jasper can't handle it, then you can help him too. The 100 billion market rescue plan was funded by the 4 rich families and the government. As such, it did not matter who was the host. The 4 rich families or the government would definitely ask someone to keep watch. As this was the case, Zachary did not have any opinions on it. Okay, I want to see how skillful this country bumpkin from mainland is, Jake said with a cold chuckle. He did not go against what the laws wanted. However, he was genuinely looking down on this country bumpkin named Jasper. He was just a hillbilly from mainland, so what knowledge and experience did he have? How dare Jasper steal this chance to rescue the market from him? Initially, he wanted to use this market rescue opportunity to better his reputation so that his business would have a bright future. However, everything had gone down the drain now. Jake's heart was bleeding. Half an hour later, Zachary went back home. The people tagging along were Jake and a few officers from the government of Harbor City. Jasper, this is Jake Cullen, the #1 professional stock trader in Harbor City. He just came back from Wall Street. Initially, the government planned to ask him to host the rescue, but I recommended you. Zachary reminded Jasper indifferently. Then he patted his shoulder and said in a low voice, however, he's nothing to me compared to you. You don't have to treat him like a fellow human being. Jasper almost burst out laughing at Zachary's last sentence. You're Jasper? Jake narrowed his eyes and said with a cold chuckle. Mr. Cullen, hello? Jasper nodded and said courteously. On the other hand, Henry's eyebrows twitched at one side. Even though he did not hear what his father said to Jasper, Jake's expression, eyes, and tone were pissing him off. Usually, he would be the one looking down on people with the kind of despise that came from the bones because he was young Master Law. Mr. Lane, may I know which university did you graduate from? What course did you do? Jake asked with a smirk. Jasper answered indifferently. Just a regular university in mainland. I have a degree in business administration. Huh? Jake guffawed and said, I was a postgraduate student in an Ivy League university in the United States, and I majored in economics. After I graduated, I joined one of the big 4 companies in the United States as an investment supervisor. I'm the most well-known young stock trader on Wall Street. You graduated from a diploma mill in mainland, and you're here, hosting a market rescue worth $100 billion? Are all mainlanders so shameless? Jasper could feel Jake targeting him, and it was obvious that he was not happy with him. However, Zachary had given him a lot of confidence just now. At this moment, Jasper did not plan to exercise forbearance with him. The situation was urgent now, and he could not let anyone affect the market rescue. You don't think I can succeed in this mission? Jasper asked indifferently. I don't care what you've achieved before this, but you have to know that the 100 billion market rescue will directly affect the future of the economy in Harbor City. Not any Tom, Dick, or Harry can host this thing. Jake suppressed the jealousy and displeasure in his stomach, saying coldly, I would advise you to give up voluntarily. Jasper sighed and turned around to call the security in law manner over. Give me a few people and make this idiot sit over there quietly. Everyone in law manner from the maids to the bodyguards knew Jasper. Naturally, they would not dare to defy his orders. As such, two beefy bodyguards walked over with malicious looks on their faces immediately. Jake widened his eyes and backed away subconsciously. He roared, "What's the meaning of this? I came here representing the government of Harbor City, and you have the balls to call the security to control me." "Shut up then." Jasper suddenly opened his mouth and yelled, "This is serious, and there's no time for you to be so presumptuous. I don't care who you are. We're doing a market rescue right now, so I won't be fighting with you over the position of authority. I don't care which Ivy League school you graduated from, and I don't care what stock genius you're on Wall Street. If you want to be a poser, then get the hell out. If you affect my decision-making with your nonsense, you won't be able to pay for the losses even if you sell your body." Chapter 198. Jasper's words shocked everyone into looking solemn. No one expected Jasper, who usually appeared so cultured and refined, to look so terrifying when he got angry. Henry almost burst out laughing at one side. Listen to that. What a beastly statement. Henry only thought of one word while listening to Jasper scold Jake. Great. It was so great that it felt refreshing. Henry wanted to laugh out loud when he saw Jake's face that looked as if he had eaten dog excrement. Jake was stumped for words. To him, a hillbilly from mainland would be very gutsy if he could say a complete sentence without stammering in front of him. However, what was going on now? Was he being berated now? Was he being scolded? He felt angry and wronged as a series of emotions became intertwined in his heart. Jake's face was green, and his entire body was trembling. He stared fixedly at Jasper, and his eyes were filled with so much bitter resentment. However, when he saw the two bodyguards who were waiting longingly for him to explode, Jake burst out laughing suddenly. He was laughing from anger. "All right, hot stuff. Okay, I won't talk. I'll see how you're going to lose later. If you cause the market rescue to fail because of your problems, then let me tell you, no one will be able to save you when that happens." Jake's tone was extremely cold. It was as if he was hoping for Jasper to face a crushing defeat. He wanted the laws and the government to know that it was their biggest mistake to have chosen this hillbilly from mainland over him. "Are you hoping that I'll fail?" Jasper looked at Jake and asked flatly. Jake scoffed, and there was visible disdain on his face. He said, "This is a battle of capitals of hundreds of billions. This is a capital trade war. Do you even know what you need? You need structure. You need foresight and strategy. You're just a country bumpkin from mainland. So what do you even know? Do you think you know the capital trade war just because you've made a few coins from stock speculation? Please take a piss and look at yourself in the reflection. I just can't bear watching the funds from the four rich families and the government being wasted by an ignorant country bumpkin like you." Jasper placed his hands behind his back and watched Jake coldly. He said, "What if I win?" It was as if Jake had heard the funniest joke in the world. He pointed at the floor and said, "If you win, I'll kneel in front of you in front of the four rich families of Harbor City. I'll grovel to you and admit my mistakes. Then, I'll formally become your apprentice. Same goes the other way. If you lose, you need to kneel, grovel, admit your mistakes, and apologize to me. You don't need to become my apprentice. You're not worthy." Jake smirked and looked at Jasper. He did not believe that Jasper would agree to these circumstances. Even though he did not know what kind of spell Jasper had cast on the laws to make them support him so much. So what? Everything depended on one's ability in the finance market. You could not do anything you want just because you have someone powerful backing you up. If you don't dare to do it, then hand over the authority to command. Tell the government that you're a piece of trash, and you're just a country bumpkin from mainland who's not brave enough to gamble. The smile on Jake's face was sinister and malicious. Don't do something that you'll regret forever because you're impulsive. You have to think carefully. This is a trade war that is worth hundreds of billions, and not the child's play of millions or tens of millions you're used to in mainland. Everyone is watching the stock market in Harbor City, and you want to host the market rescue this time? Are you even qualified for this? Chapter 199. When Jake was close to getting the opportunity to humiliate Jasper, he heard 4 unenthusiastic words. All right, I'll do it. Jasper's 4 words caused Jake to have a million words in his head, but he was unable to even utter one word. What did you say? Jake narrowed his eyes and looked at Jasper. I'll take this bet. If I win, you'll kneel and formally become my apprentice. Of course, you have to kneel and grovel. It'll depend on my mood if I want to take you as my apprentice. And vice versa, Jasper said fully. Jake laughed angrily and said, All right, you're the one who said this. I'll take this bet. Country bumpkin from mainland. Remember this, the worst mistake in your life is stealing this market rescue because you seek to impress people by taking on more than your ability. From this moment on, you're going to have your reputation swept away. Jake smiled coldly and said, The facts will tell you that Harbor Stocks is the one place where all the international capitals come together. On the other hand, a country bumpkin from mainland, like you, will only be an ignorant and narrow-minded toad. You have no idea how big the outside world is. I have no idea how big the outside world is, but there are a lot of idiots in society nowadays, Jasper said insipidly. Jake said sharply and unkindly, Don't think you're all that because you're quick-witted. I've seen a lot of people like you. They don't have any talents and only know how to dupe people with their smart mouths, but actually they're just lying. I've seen more than you think you know. I can even make a name for myself in a place like Wall Street. So who do you think you are? Jake said disdainfully. Not bad. You're indeed educated, so that's why you keep saying the same old stuff. Remember what you just said, so you can reminisce about them when you eat your words later. It'll help you make clear of reality. After he said that, Jasper did not want to pay any more attention to this simpleton. He entered the door while talking to Zachary. Then, the group went into the house together. Nobody paid any attention to Jake. Mr. Cullen, shall we go in? The official from the government who tagged along smiled bitterly and said. Jake gritted his teeth while feeling aggrieved. He smirked coldly and said, Go. Let's go now. I want to see how he's going to fail and how he's going to die. When he fails, I want him to kneel in front of me, unable to cry. Those people who are supporting him now will also pay the price for being hot-headed. They will know that only I can host this rescue. Still in that secluded villa, Bob stood at one side with an awkward and angry expression. Kennedy's face was grim, and he did not look good. On the other side was Rogers. He lightly tapped the surface of the table with his fingertips and said coldly, Lancaster, I think you're very stupid. It was such an obvious trap, and you couldn't even see it. On the contrary, you even fell into it. Bob's expression looked even worse. Even though he was feeling extremely pissed, he did not try to defend himself. He knew what everyone wanted now was results and not explanations. The result was that he was the one who did not crash Harbor Stocks according to the initial plan, but instead, he fell into the other party's trap and caused them to lose a few $100 million of funds. At this moment, the more he explained, the more mistakes he would make. Kennedy scoffed. Even though he was displeased with Bob's useless performance, he still said, Since it has already happened, there's no use explaining anymore. I just got the news that the laws are going to make Jasper the host of the market rescue. Now, we can be sure that Jasper was the one behind what happened this morning. At this moment, a Caucasian man walked in front of Rogers with a cold expression on his face. He handed him some documents. Jasper Lane? The young man. Rogers lowered his head to look through the information in his hands. Suddenly, he guffawed and said, Interesting. I didn't expect this young man to give everyone such a huge surprise. Chapter 200. Earlier this year, he made his first pot of gold in the futures market in mainland. Then he made a lot of money in the international crude oil market. I didn't expect the mysterious retail investor that Quantum Fund contacted last time to be him as well. When Kennedy and Bob heard that, they were surprised. I guess we underestimated him last time, Kennedy said profoundly. You guys got information on Jasper in such a short time? Bob narrowed his eyes and said while suppressing the shock in his heart. Roger shrugged and said nonchalantly, You have to believe in the ability of Quantum Fund. We have clients and information all over the world. As long as you can pay, I can even tell you what color underwear the top man of the United States is wearing right now. I have to go to Law Manor in the afternoon. On one hand, I'm going to watch their every move, and on the other hand, I need to be prepared at any time. So, over here, Kennedy looked at Rogers. You don't have to worry, Rogers said flatly. My people from Quantum Fund will take over from now. Bob was not happy that he had been pushed aside. He asked quickly, what about me? You can watch from one side. Kennedy sighed and made eyes at Bob secretly. Even though he was disappointed in Bob, Kennedy could not kick him away now. The collaboration with Quantum Fund was fine for now, but Kennedy knew more than anyone that Quantum Fund was a coyote that would swallow a person whole. He needed to go to Law Manor, so no one would be keeping an eye on Quantum Fund. He would not be able to be at ease this way. Bob understood what Kennedy meant and could only nod. It was as if Rogers had no idea what they were communicating about. He said insipidly, initially my team and I planned to collaborate with the government and aristocrats of Harbor City to rescue the market. This time, we've prepared 150 billion Harbor dollars in addition to your 50 billion. He lifted 2 fingers. We have a fund of 200 billion, but the market rescue fund of Harbor City is only 100 billion. Plus, I have a team of the best traders in the world. So how can they fight with me? When Kennedy heard this, he got up and said, okay, we'll do it according to the plan. I'll go to Law Manor now. It's almost time, so I have to get there before the market commences in the afternoon. Before the market commenced in the afternoon, the atmosphere in Law Manor was getting lively. One after another, cars representing the top aristocratic families in Harbor City drove into Law Manor. At the same time, the security had been heightened to the max. Not only did the millionaires have their own bodyguards, but the police force that was transferred here by the government was also patrolling around the place. Before the end of the financial war, this place would be one of the safest places in Harbor City. In the living room of Law Manor, Jasper was officially meeting the heads of the 4 richest families in Harbor City. There was nothing much to say about Zachary. The first one to greet Jasper was Clark. Young man, I've heard about you. Keith told me about you as well. You're exceptional. I'm depending on you this time. Clark shook Jasper's hand and said. Jasper nodded and said, don't worry, Mr. Duval. I'll do my best. Clark laughed loudly and said, you don't have to bear too much burden. If the sky were to fall, us old farts will hold it for you. I'm young and my body is still strong, so I don't think you elders need to throw your caps in the ring. Jasper made a joke. Clark guffawed and pointed at Jasper before he turned his head to say to Spencer and Kennedy, look, I told you that Zachary won't make mistakes. This young man is so interesting. Kennedy smiled and looked at Jasper. He said, our hopes are on you. Jasper replied neither obsequiously nor superciliously. I'll try my best. To be honest, I was quite surprised when I knew it was you. There was a hidden meaning behind what Kennedy said, and it was significant. Jasper looked at Kennedy without saying anything. Kennedy patted Jasper's shoulder affectionately. He grinned and said, my son is insensible. It'll be useful for him if you taught him a lesson. Jasper did not think much about what Kennedy said. At this moment, perhaps he was worried that the animosity between the two of them would affect the market rescue plan. So Kennedy's words actually sounded pretty reasonable. Your son and I did have some beef between us, but it's between us. The present condition is more important for now. Jasper's attitude caused Kennedy to smile in satisfaction. He said, we're looking forward to your performance. While they were talking, Zach knocked on the door and came in. Sir, 3 minutes till the market commences. There were a lot of sirs in this room. However, everyone knew he was referring to Jasper. Jasper nodded and extended his hand as an invitation. Then, he led the heads of the 4 rich families into the living room. Clark, Zachary, Kennedy, and Spencer arrived in the living room, and the air there immediately became intense. Even Zach and Jake, who wanted so badly for Jasper to fall flat on his face, were feeling more nervous than usual, let alone the stock traders. After all, these 4 men were the heads of the 4 rich families of Harbor City. It would be extremely difficult to meet even one of them on any ordinary day. Now, they were here together. Everyone felt a sense of glory as they were in the same room as sovereign kings who were far removed from the masses in reality. Jake suppressed the nervousness in his heart. With a scoff, He looked at Jasper, who was the center of everyone's attention. He felt extremely jealous and furious. If it was not for this country bumpkin from mainland, the person enjoying the attention and escort from the heads of the 4 rich families would be him, Jake Cullen. When he thought about this, Jake clenched his fists in anger. His eyes that were staring at Jasper were getting more and more hostile. Stock traders, get ready for the commencement of the market. Jasper did not care what the 4 rich families and Jake were thinking. He ordered calmly and unhurriedly. After he said that, the stock traders under him started making preparations. A hint of solemnness and respectfulness appeared amidst the intense atmosphere in the living room. After turning around, Jasper saw Anna handing him a pot of tea she just brewed. Anna knew Jasper liked drinking tea, and he would drink some whenever he felt like it. As such, whenever she was free, she would make a pot for Jasper. This was the tacit understanding that had been cultivated between the two of them after spending these few days with each other. Jasper smiled at Anna before turning around and lifting his head to look at the digital screen. Right now, it was the countdown to the commencement of the market. At the same time, in the secluded villa, the team of stock traders had been replaced by blonde-haired Caucasians with blue eyes. As the person with the decision-making power, the man stood under the digital screen and stretched lazily. Brace yourselves, boys. This afternoon, I want to massacre Harbor stocks. Tomorrow, all of the investors from around the world will know the name Quantum Fund. We're the kings of the capitalist world. Chapter 201. When it was time, the market commenced. In the split second after, not only the investors in Harbor City were watching Harbor stocks, but numerous capitalists from all over the world also had their eyes on it. Although the burst of the dot-com bubble was global, anyone with a discerning eye would be able to tell that the situation in Harbor City was more than extraordinary. It was because someone was trying to collapse the economy in Harbor City using the crisis. This was already a financial battle, and it was not as simple as a normal crisis after the burst of a bubble. The moment the market commenced, numerous funds were being injected frantically into the transaction of the stock market index. The Hansel Index was fluctuating intensely in just a split second. Mr. Lane, the Hansel Index dropped by 11 points after the commencement of the market. Currently, the short sale of the funds that have reached a deal has reached 5 billion, and it's increasing continuously. Mr. Lane, the party that's short selling is offensive and violent. Now, the Hansel Index has dropped another 7 points. Mr. Lane, 2 stocks in Harbor stocks have reached their price limits. The atmosphere in the living room became more intense after Zach reported the situation at an extremely fast speed. Spencer, from the 4 rich families, had a horrible look on his face because the 2 stocks that had reached their limits were the listed companies under his name. The other party was having a demonstration. They were attacking the stocks of the rich families. Everyone looked at Jasper, waiting for him to give out an order. However, Jasper was only drinking his tea. The lingering, dense vapor was hanging in the air, obscuring his expression. Spencer could not keep his cool anymore because his listed companies had been attacked to their price limits. He said, "Mr. Lane, aren't we going to do anything?" At this moment, Jake smirked and said, "I think he's stumped from the attacks. It's just been 3 minutes since the commencement. The funds of the short-selling parties who are waiting for the put have been increased to 7 billion. Have you never seen this kind of battle, Country Bumpkin? Let me teach you. The market needs confidence now. Everyone knows that the government of Harbor City has a market rescue plan. You should go in immediately and clear the market of the sellers." While he said that, Jake chuckled coldly. "Country Bumpkin, you can't handle this kind of battle. You should hand over the power to conduct and do, as I say, obediently." Jake's words started to sway the opinions of everyone in the room. Indeed, according to the normal rhythm, what Jake said would be the best way to handle this. However, if Zachary and Clark did not speak, then nobody would dare to say anything. Zach looked at the attacks by the sellers that were getting denser and more intense on the market. At this moment, the Hansel Index was falling continuously. Zach did not know when the sweat started to form on his forehead. He asked carefully, "Mr. Lane, what should we do?" At this moment, Jasper said, "Don't worry. Let's bide our time." When Jake heard this, he chortled. "Bide our time? Is this the ability of the Country Bumpkin you found? He's all battered and bruised, and he wants to bide the time?" I'm going to die from laughter. Spencer, you're the head of the 4 rich families. You're going to lose the market value of your company because he wants to bide his time. Jake kept smirking. His words were like venomous snakes as he frantically ridiculed Jasper. Get lost if you don't have the skills. Why are you inflicting suffering on other people here? You're pretending to be so calm, but in reality, you've already pissed your pants from fear, right? Country bumpkins are so stupid. I told you should fight back now. Do you think you'll lose your reputation by listening to me? What a joke. Anyone knows the ability of a mainland hillbilly like you. Stop acting like a poser here. Okay, enough. Zachary interrupted Jake's taunts coldly. Can you shut your mouth? You're so noisy. When Jake saw Zachary's hostile expression, he swallowed his saliva and suppressed his anger and hatred. He scoffed with a disdainful look on his face, but he did not dare to talk back to Zachary. Jasper had been staring fixedly at the digital monitor the entire time. Lines and lines of information kept being refreshed. Jasper was arranging and analyzing every move of the other party in his head. Chapter 202. With a whoosh, the Hansel Index fell to 7,802 points. The short-selling party was vigorously attacking the defense line of 7,800 points. At this moment, no matter the heads of the 4 rich families at the scene, the higher-ups who were following the changes of the stock market and the government of Harbor City, or the ordinary investors at home and at the exchange watching the market, a lot of them were curious. Why was Jasper not doing anything? If the Hansel Index fell and broke 7,800 points by the short-selling party, it would be too late to do anything when everything tumbled down vigorously. Make an opening. Under everyone's anticipating gazes, Jasper finally said something. Everyone shifted their gazes over to him. Jake chuckled coldly and looked at Jasper. He was waiting for him to make a decision. Make an opening at 7,800 points. Buy all of the short-selling orders in the list that's under 100 million. After Zach heard that, he turned around to yell at the stock traders under him. Did you guys hear that? Do it according to Mr. Lane's orders. The stock traders had been suppressing themselves since the beginning. After they got the order, they immediately started firing away on their keyboards frantically. In the next second, all of the short-selling orders under 100 million in Harbor stocks were swept clean by Jasper. The other party sold their orders and Jasper would buy them. With one in and one out, he managed to stabilize the number of transactions. On the other hand, the Hansel Index was forcibly stopped at 7,801 points, unable to budge. The stock price of another listed company of Spencer's that was being attacked seemed stable now. This allowed Spencer to let out a sigh of relief. He was feeling miserable. He did not know why the other party would target him. At this moment, they could hear Jake's cold laugh floating over. You idiot. The orders below 100 million are all just useless troops and minor characters. The true pressure comes from the main force of the other party. You're not attacking the main force, and instead, you're attacking these useless troops. I'd be insulting a pig if I say you're as stupid as a pig. At this moment inside the secluded villa, Rogers was staring at the market. Oh, he's finally doing something, because he can't bear this anymore, huh? Rogers said with a scoff after he saw the orders under 100 million being cleared out in the market. What should we do next? One of his subordinates asked. Rogers shrugged and poured himself a glass of red wine. He said, our opponent is just observing our tactics. Now he has cleared out the tiny investors who wanted to make some money while hopping onto the trend. Is he trying to fight with us on 7,800 points? We'll continue to wait for it to drop and short sell. Open more small orders under 100 million. If he wants to clean up the battlefield, then I'll just create more messes for him. What an interesting young man from mainland. Your calmness surprises me, but can you still find where my main force is? I can almost tell the composition of the main force from the seller, but now there are a lot of vermins trying to use this opportunity to make some money while Harbor stocks is plummeting. These vermins will obscure our vision. So if we want to find the main force that's short-selling, we have to clear the battlefield, Jasper said. Then more than 10 transactions from the seller that were under 100 billion dominated the digital screen all of a sudden. Jake chortled. Are you dumbfounded? Do you think you're the only one who knows how to make something unnecessarily complicated? You're so great at talking big, so find it for me now. Where's the main force hiding among these dozens of orders? These are just confusions created by the main force. Why should I find them? Jasper said insipidly while ordering. Make openings. Buy and clear out all of the short-selling transactions on the market. I want them to be unable to create more confusion. Then make more openings, list out, and buy in the order of 10 billion. Our target point on the Hansel Index is 7,850 points. Chapter 203. A large order of 10 billion. It was a rare sight to see no matter which stock exchange market in the world one was at. This afternoon, investors from all around the world had their eyes on Harbor stocks when a large order of 10 billion with genuine significance appeared. When this 10 billion was injected into the market, this was undoubtedly a cardiac stimulant to the buyers who were almost exhausted of all resources. Everyone knew that the market rescue from the government and 4 rich families had started to take place. The fund of hundreds of billions was finally here. However, the investors were not able to stay happy for long. This huge order of 10 billion was devoured in the next second like it was a provocation. At the same time, numerous selling orders appeared at the side of the short-selling party. The Hansel Index that just had signs of recovery dropped down to about 7,800 points again, and it was fluctuating around that figure. The main forces of the seller and buyer started an intense massacre surrounding 7,800 points without any warning. By all of the top 10 stocks of infrastructure bank, energy and technology, and the 4 major sectors. There are 40 stocks, and it'll be a total of 40 billion if each of them is 1 billion. After you're done so, I'll authorize it. Jasper kept giving out orders in the living room. At this moment, the atmosphere and situation in the living room were extremely intense. Jasper was hosting the main force of the buying side. He had already come to grips with the mysterious main force of the selling side that was hiding in the dark and close-range fighting. Transactions worth hundreds of millions were made in every minute and every second. On the market, the retail investor had all been cleared out of the game. The ones remaining were the institutions who would ride roughshod over people normally. But now, they were shaking like leaves in the wind and did not dare to make any noise as they watched the 2 big shots going head-to-head with each other. The stock market worked much like fantasy novels with distinct power levels. Usually, retailers would just follow the direction of those higher up on the food chain in hopes of making a buck or 2 off the wisdom of the rich. Meanwhile, a collective of retail investors combined was strong enough to take down any force. There were simply too many retail investors. With such a big spread of resources, it was hard to stay united. Those with a higher level of capital were usually called whales. These large-scale retail investors were characterized by their large amounts of capital, and they had the ability to influence the price of companies with small to medium market capitalizations. Moving up another level would be the institutions. Institutions were usually led by investment banks or large investment companies. These folks controlled capital starting from billions at the entry level, and quite a few operated in the realm of tens of billions. All in all, institutions were considered the giant crocodiles in the stock market. Usually, they were the ones calling the shots and making the deals in the market. However, at this moment, the power of the institutions was insignificant. It was because the true main forces of the 2 parties had funds reaching hundreds of billions, and they could easily affect the fluctuation of Harbor stocks. After the authorization, the 40 stocks Jasper chose started rising in response. The stocks would spur the market. While the Hansel Index rose, the pressure on the short-selling party would skyrocket. It was evident that the short-selling party had not expected Jasper to take action at this moment. Plus, the 40 stocks Jasper chose belonged to large-scale listed companies with huge dimensions. They would need to pay a large price if they wanted to lower the prices for these. The main force of the short-selling party hesitated for a few seconds. In the next second, a fund of 100 billion entered the market. It was as if they were opposing each other with equal harshness. The fund of 100 billion entered those 40 stocks and was frantically crashing the market. Got them? Jasper's eyes were lighting up like never before. Even if they were virtually fighting this war with their opponent, and they could not smell any inferno or smoke, Jasper could feel the pressure from the other party every second of the way. They were experts. Plus, they were top-notch experts who were skilled in stock trading with large amounts of funds. The reason Jasper did that move back then was to force out the fund of the main force of the other party. At this moment, with an injection of a fund of 100 billion, it seemed that the other party had seen through Jasper's decision and was taking up the challenge. This tactic, Jake exclaimed. Chapter 204. It's the capitalist from the West. It's definitely one of the financial big shots from the West. No ordinary person would have skills and courage like that. It's going to be a decisive battle. Jake's face had turned red from either excitement or fear. He roared at Jasper, "Hurry! The opponent's main force has shown up. They're going to fight a decisive battle with you in the next second. Put down your composition and make an opening right now. You have to protect the 40 stocks from just now with your life." Jasper did not pay attention to Jake, who was screaming frantically. On the other hand, he asked Zach, "How much is the purchase price of the 40 stocks earlier?" Zach immediately answered, "Volumes at 40%. Cancel all the remaining orders that have not reached a deal." When he said that, everyone in the room was shocked. That was right. In a stock transaction, when you bought a stock with a price, you needed someone who was selling with the same price to get a successful transaction. If not, it could be canceled at any time. However, would Jasper not be giving a helping hand to the enemy if he canceled the transactions at this crucial moment? Are you King insane? After feeling shocked, Jake looked at Jasper with disdain on his face. Do you even know the stock market? How can you cancel at this moment? Is this part of your own plans and arrangements? Are you the King spy that was sent here by the opponent? Get lost if you don't know anything. Stop harming yourself and the others over here. Don't consign yourself to eternal damnation because you want to be a poser. At this moment, an officer from the government of Harbor City said solemnly, "Mr. Lane, I'm not doubting your decision, but I think you can give everyone a reason why you're doing this. Do you know about traps?" Jasper said insipidly, "If we fight with them for real, even if we win, Harbor stocks will be in ruins. So, we have to set a trap, and in this trap we need some bait. My bait is over here." While he said that, Jasper lifted his hand to point at the 40 stocks on the digital screen that were plummeting frantically because of his cancellation. When everyone was pondering about what Jasper had said, Zach raised his voice. The Hansel Index has fallen under 7,800 points. Everyone looked over with ghastly expressions. The Hansel Index on the digital screen showed 7,620 points. A fund of 100 billion that crashed the market combined with Jasper's cancellation was one disaster on top of another. The Hansel Index eventually fell below 7,800 points. It was the lowest in history. This is my bait. Do you dare come at me at 7,600 points? Jasper muttered. You're gambling with the economy of Harbor City. Jake yelled. If you do this and fail, Harbor stocks will be in ruins. You're insane. While he said that, Jake walked to the heads of the 4 rich families who had been silent this entire time. He pointed at Jasper and said, "He's a lunatic. I suggest that we strip him of his authority to conduct. Let me do it. He's from mainland, and it's in his bones that he won't care about the economy of Harbor City. He's just messing around without a plan. Tell him to get lost now. I'm the only one who can save the economy of Harbor City." Jake yelled loudly. Clark's face was as calm as a pool of water. He turned to look at Zachary and did not say anything. Zachary said in a deep voice, "However, if he succeeds, he'll be able to take care of this crisis instantly. I think it's worth it." Spencer shook his head and said, "I'll listen to you guys." At this moment, Kennedy secretly wrote a text message on his phone without batting an eyelid and sent it out. Then he said flatly, "Why don't we continue observing?" Clark nodded and said, "Since we've chosen him, we have to believe him." While he said that, Clark peered at Jake. "Please be quiet." Jake was extremely disappointed and furious. He pointed at Jasper and said, "You son of a b****, I want to watch how you're going to die with my own eyes. If Harbor stocks collapse, the economy of Harbor City will fall back a few years. You're being so pretentious now, but soon, you'll become the target of scorn. When that time comes, you'll only have yourself to blame because you were too arrogant and conceited. You're just a country bumpkin, so you should know your place and stay in the poor valley in mainland. Why did you come to Harbor City asking for death? Chapter 205. Inside the secluded villa, Roger's eyes were staring fixedly at the phone in his hand. After he deleted the message, he lifted his head to look at the digital screen. A cold smile appeared on the corners of his lips. You're Jasper, right? You're too sly. I almost fell into your trap. While he said that, Rogers calmly gave his order. Watch for a bearish and sell short. Don't hold back. It's here. The short-selling party is attacking. Zach's excited voice broke the contemplations of everyone in the living room. At this moment, they could only see the 40 stocks plummeting wildly in the blink of an eye. In less than 3 minutes, they were almost at their price limits. With the fund of $100 billion, not only the 40 stocks, but almost all of the remaining and surviving stocks in Harbor stocks were plummeting wildly. On the other hand, the Hansel Index was plunging like it had fallen down a precipice. Oh no! Almost everyone in Harbor City was howling in grief. Jasper had never been so focused before. Make more openings. Build a defensive line at 7,610 points on the Hansel Index. Let them know this is our defensive line. Aside from the internet sector, buy all of the top 10 stocks of all of the other sectors. Buy all of them with huge amounts of money. The authorized fund for this execution is $150 billion. After Jasper said that, Clark stood up suddenly. He exclaimed, the total market rescue fund amounts to just $100 billion. So where is this $150 billion coming from? I have them, Jasper said insipidly. Don't worry about the funds. When he said that, he did not look at the conflicted expressions on Clark and the others' faces. He continued to give out his orders. The main forces of both sides have been fighting at close range. This time, there was no probing. It was a direct grapple of fund injections between the two main forces. Jasper stared straight at the Hansel Index. He watched as it got nearer to 7,600 points gradually. At this moment, Jasper was a little nervous as well. When the other party forced the Hansel Index down to 7,600 points, he would be able to use this trap and lure the other party here. This trap was like a lasso. Once it got hold of the funds of the main force of the other party, they would be a pig in an impossible situation waiting to be slaughtered by Jasper. The current situation was indeed developing according to Jasper's prediction. 7,610 points. Jasper had deliberately put down a defensive line. After a series of tough resistance, it was still broken through. However, the following points would be more and more challenging for the short-selling party, who was waiting for a bearish to break. It was as if Jasper's final defensive line was at 7,600 points. Once it was broken, Jasper would lose all control. The fruit of victory was right in front of their eyes. 7,608 points. Jasper was still resisting. He kept giving out orders based on the decisions he made. Zach and everyone in the team wanted so badly to grow 4 more pairs of hands to be able to operate in time. 7,605 points. The smell of smoke in Harbor City was now extremely thick. This trade war in the stock market was destined to be written into the textbooks of business schools, and it had already reached its true climax. 7,602 points. The pressure had been forced to the max. At this moment, both Jasper and the short-selling party had already thrown their whole weights behind this. Even the heads of the 4 rich families could not sit still now, let alone the investors out there. They were all standing up now, and their eyes were glued on the market. Aside from Kennedy, of course. He was pretending to look nervous, but there was a sneer and a hint of ridicule hiding deep in his features. He felt that this was interesting. While looking at the reactions of these people, he suddenly wanted to know what his comrades' expressions would be if they knew he was a spy and he had already leaked all of their information out. When he thought about this, Kennedy could not help but wanted to burst out laughing. Jasper stared heatedly at the digital screen. Numerous pieces of information of the transactions kept refreshing on the screen. An unprecedented and intense close-quarter fight was happening on the battlefield between the two main forces. Everything looked normal. He was protecting his defensive line, and the opponent was inching closer to him. However, it was as if the short-selling party did not have enough follow-up power. When the index was at 7,602 points, it would not fall no matter what. Chapter 206. To other people, this looked like good news. However, Jasper sensed something amiss. The main force of the short-selling party must be a top-notch expert. It would be impossible for him not to know why Jasper was insisting on protecting 7,600 points. At this moment, he was getting closer and closer to victory. The treasure was right in front of him after working so hard, and it was within arm's reach. However, he was suddenly backing away now. This move was very unusual. To the outsiders, this meant that the main force of the short-selling part had exhausted their resources. However, Jasper had been fighting with them this whole time, and he was sure they still had energy left over. "Something's wrong," Jasper yelled all of a sudden. "He's going to run." "Increase the stock price now. All of them. Use the fastest speed you can to increase the Hansel index." Jasper's voice startled Zach. He instinctively carried out Jasper's orders as if it was in his subconscious. It was like magic. The Hansel index skyrocketed as if someone had used a cheat code on it. The screen was initially shrouded by a gloomy-looking green color, but after the increase of the stocks, the numbers turned from dark green to bright red. The stock market had a rebound and was increasing. At the same time, it was as if the short-selling party did not dare to continue the fight. They were retreating. The Hansel index increased from 7,602 points to 7,650 points, 7,680 points, 7,800 points, 8,000 points. It surmounted all difficulties, and there were no obstacles on the way. "We won!" Spencer yelled in excitement. Not only him, but the entire Harbor City was going insane. "We won! The stock market is rising. We saved it!" Everyone was frantically celebrating the victory. After the last transaction of the short-selling party was taken down, the Hansel index went up to 8,500 points. Even though there was still a long way to go to reach the top, it would all be a matter of time. After all, Harbor stocks plummeted because of an irresistible trend. The bubble would eventually burst if it became too big. So when that happened, not even the gods could stop it. Jasper had saved the points, and it was equivalent to saving the economy of Harbor City. This was pretty commendable. This battle of the two main forces finally came to an end. The living room fell into a state of boiling merriment. The heads of the four rich families were beaming. Even the officials from the government were high-fiving each other in celebration. Outside of the crowd, Jake's face was white as he murmured, "How is that possible? How could they just retreat like this? He won just like that? Impossible." Jake looked ghastly pale, and his first thought was to run. He felt as much panic as the arrogance he initially felt. However, the moment he turned around, he saw the young master of the laws, Henry, blocking the door with a grin on his face. He looked as if he was waiting for him to make a mistake so that he could beat him up authoritatively and fairly. Jake gritted his teeth and withdrew his foot that had already stepped out. The look on his face changed irregularly, and he looked horrible. "Congratulations. Mr. Lane, you did it." Kennedy came over to Jasper unbeknownst to him and said with a grin. Jasper had no joy on his face. It was because this entire script was completely different than the one he had in mind. The main force of the other party had retreated at a crucial moment, causing Jasper's initial plan to be fruitless for the greater part. Even though they won for now, for Jasper, he knew he had lost a little to his opponent. The other party had obviously seen through his objective. They did not step into his trap, but on the contrary, they turned around and walked away. Jasper composed himself while facing Kennedy's words of congratulations. He smiled lightly and said, "I just did what I should do. We always have to remember that there's always someone who's better than us in this world, no?" Kennedy said this significant statement. Jasper's eyes twinkled as he looked deeply at Kennedy. Then he nodded and said, "Yes, but I believe the truth will come out one day." Chapter 207. Was there a mole? This was the biggest possibility Jasper could come up with. However, he did not eliminate the possibility that the opponent had predicted what he was about to do. In short, it did not matter if there was a mole or not. Judging from the current situation, Jasper should enjoy the fruits of his victory. It would be impossible for Harbor City to get through the burst of the economic bubble, this time unharmed. The global economy had been badly affected and suffered a great loss. These were the rules of economics and also the trend that Jasper was talking about, so it would be impossible to change this. As such, as long as he was able to stop Harbor City's economy from being further destroyed, this was the biggest victory for him. Jasper had done it. However, it just did not reach his expectations. Jasper got rid of these thoughts and walked in front of Jake. He only smiled and did not say anything. Jake looked at Jasper sinisterly and frenetically. He gritted his teeth and said, "Why are you smiling at me like that?" "Honor your promise," said Jasper insipidly. "You said that if I win, you'll kneel, grovel, admit your mistakes, and even become my apprentice. Did you forget that in such a short time?" Jake laughed from anger. "You want me to kneel, grovel, and ask you to make me your apprentice? You're dreaming. The heads of the 4 rich families have all witnessed what you said just now. If you plan not to own up, then can you guess what your consequences will be?" Jasper said flatly. Jake said with animosity, "Jasper, don't go too far." "Am I going too far, or were you too egotistical?" Jasper asked, and his eyes that were looking at Jake were emotionless. "I never liked competing with someone verbally. I prefer to talk based on facts. Now, you've seen it for yourself. I won. So, you should honor your promise." Henry chuckled and walked over. He lifted his hand and patted Jake's shoulder. He pressed him down, saying slovenly, "You son of a B***. You bet, you pay. Now, a weasel like you should kneel, grovel, and admit your mistakes before asking him to take you as his apprentice." After he said that, Henry said meaningfully, "If you don't kneel, do you think you can walk out the door of Law Manors?" After Jake heard that, his face turned white. He knew a child of a top aristocrat like Henry would have the guts to do anything. There were also a lot of people willing to risk their lives for him. Jake pondered for a while before bowing his head deeply. He bent his knees and knelt on the floor heavily. "I was wrong. I'm sorry." Jake gritted his teeth and suppressed the anger in his heart. "Please take me as your apprentice." Jasper looked at him unenthusiastically and said to Henry, "Let him go and let him leave. You're not taking him as your apprentice?" Henry asked with a grin. He wanted to use this opportunity to insult him some more. Next time, Jasper narrowed his eyes. If one overlooked the rest, a person like Jake really had professional skills. He was a suitable candidate to be his subordinate to manage the properties in Harbor City after he left. However, it was not suitable to talk about this now. "All right, get lost?" Henry kicked Jake. "Remember to be humble next time. Don't go about with your nose in the air, just because you have some kills." After he heard this, Jake got up hurriedly. He glanced at the two of them with bitter resentment in his eyes and was too embarrassed to stay here anymore. As such, he turned around and ran away. The heads of the 4 rich families were very busy, especially now. After exchanging courtesies with Jasper and leaving promises of working with him in the future, they left hurriedly. After Kennedy got out of Law Manor, he did not go to put his assets in order like the rest of the gang. On the contrary, he went back to the secluded villa. After he stepped into the villa, he saw Rogers smiling at him while raising his wine glass. "My #1 spy is back," Rogers joked. Kennedy shook his hand nonchalantly and asked, "How's our profit?" "We can make a ton of money, of course," Rogers said and shrugged. "However, there's still some disparity with what we expected. That young man, Jasper, is very skilled. The trap in the inn was pretty interesting, yet you still managed to solve it now?" "I saw Jasper with a horrible look on his face when I was over there," Kennedy said with a smile. "He's still young and needs to pay some tuition fees after all," said Rogers while standing up. Chapter 208. I'm also heading back to the United States to report myself in. There's a celebration banquet awaiting me as well. All the investors were extremely satisfied with the cooperation with my fellow partners. From now onward, we'll have opportunities to work together. The share that belongs to you will be transferred to your designated account within this week. For now, let's stay low as currently, Harbor City is experiencing a massive crash in the .com bubble. Many potential shares are on the lower side, and it's just the right timing to enter now, Rogers said as he burst into laughter. To be honest, I'm looking forward to the day when I cross paths with Jasper. This young man has intrigued my interest. After making only a few comments, Rogers led his team to leave the scene. In the villa, only Kennedy and Bob were left there. Kennedy tossed a cigarette to Bob and said with a complicated expression, This bunch of foreigners has earned quite a ton, Bob said with a rather jealous feeling. Their ability is overwhelming. What can we do about them? However, this is also a lesson for Jasper. It should make him realize others are more capable than him, and he shouldn't be too arrogant. Kennedy breathed out a mouthful of smoke and said, "In the future, there will be plenty of chances to teach youngsters in Harbor City about their standings in society." While he was in the middle of the conversation, Kennedy received a call. It was a call from his son, Mitch Langdon. "What's the matter?" Kennedy asked. On the other end of the call, Mitch's voice was followed by a sobbing tone. "Dad, I'm broke." At that moment, Mitch's hair and clothes were in a mess. It was as if he was a poor guy running for his life. He glanced at Zane, who was on the ground and unable to move an inch. The man was not saying a word while Mitch was speaking with a shaking voice. "I thought Harbor stocks would still drop today, so I used up the family's assets and put it into a short sale. I didn't expect that be *starred Jasper to be chosen as the host for the Market Rescue Fund. In the first wave, he immediately cleared off our orders. Currently, the prices are continuously rising. Me and Zane have been liquidated and are bankrupt." Kennedy, who initially was still in a somewhat pleasant mood, immediately had a dark expression after hearing it. "Didn't I order you to behave yourself and stay at home without doing anything? Who gave you the guts to make your own decision and go forth to play with stocks? Don't you know what the current situation is? Even I'm being cautious and dare not do anything rashly. Who are you guys to be so daring?" Kennedy was getting more exasperated as he spoke, and he suddenly roared as he asked, "How much did you and Zane lose, respectively?" "We're both broke. I've lost billions. Zane has it far worse. He even mortgaged his house and suffered a loss of $600 million, said Mitch with a shaky voice. Kennedy took in a deep breath and said through his gritted teeth, "What a piece of trash who can never accomplish anything and only fails." At this period, there are tons of eyes watching over the actions of affluent families like us. If this news spreads out, that my son carried out a short sale on shares and attempted to engulf the hard-earned monies of those shareholders only to end up losing billions. Say, what do you think those reporters will write about it? The pride of the Langdon family, my pride, and your grandpa's pride will all be tainted by rubbish like you. I'm with Bob right now. You two spoiled brats better come back home this instant. At the Law's household, Jasper was calculating the rewards from this operation. He did not feel good whenever he thought of the mistake made at the end of the market rescue plan. After deducting the $100 billion funds to save the city, we managed to earn $98 billion from the $40 billion capital during its peak. However, in the afternoon, I used that sum of money for the market rescue plan. On the surface, we've won. However, at the very last moment, it was obviously my loss when I was having a contest with the opponent. I lost an additional $18 billion. Jasper was shaking his head in Zachary's office. There was a look of dismay on his face. So, right now, we still have $80 billion with us, which coincidentally has been doubled. It's just that most of the money couldn't be taken out, all so that we can stabilize Harbor stocks. Zachary tapped on Jasper's shoulder and said, "You've already done the best. Don't be too harsh on yourself. You'll only wear yourself out. I'll take control over that sum of money. Previously, you spent $5 billion and gained back your capital with some profits. Later, I'll give you $10 billion. Michael is just the same as you. He took out $5 billion of capital. I'll do the same and give him an additional $10 billion. The remaining $60 billion, I'll gladly accept it." Zachary was smiling. He sensed that this young lad, Jasper Lane, would one day be a big shot in the future. No, it should be that he was heading to a much higher stage in the world where he would stand at a higher level. The thought of it made Zachary glance at Jasper with an astonished gaze. He admired and respected Jasper from the bottom of his heart. To be honest, at the very beginning when you said you're able to help the Law family earn back that $10 billion, I was still doubting you. But now, you've helped the Law family earn $30 billion. You didn't let us down. You even exceeded our expectations. Chapter 209. Jasper shook his head and said, "We both gained some benefits. Without the Law family, I wouldn't be earning this much as well. At the end of the day, without the help from the Law family, I'm afraid that I wouldn't even have the opportunity to show my talents as well." Zachary nodded his head with satisfaction, when facing Jasper's humbleness. He said with a smile, "Regardless, you've indeed done a huge favor for the Law family in this matter. The Law family shall always remember this." Jasper waved his hand and said with his expression suddenly becoming much more serious, "Uncle Law, please allow me to say something on my mind. Just keep these words in your heart after hearing this." Seeing that Jasper was speaking in such a manner, Zachary became all serious as well. He said, "Spit it out. I'm all ears." At the very last moment, I was actually planning to set up a trap for the opponent. Once he was in the trap, he would be within my control. With that, we could have gobbled up the main funds for a short sale, at least half of it. "I know about this. You mentioned it previously," said Zachary. "But at the 11th hour, we just lacked that one step. The opponent was very decisive and backed off instead. I'm suspecting that there's a spy among us." Hearing this made Zachary's expression become extremely stern. "We can be absolutely sure that the main force doing the short sale has its funds from the Western countries. However, the investigation about who the leader is still ongoing. You're saying that among us, there's a spy who's helping out the Western countries." Zachary's tone was extremely serious. Earlier, there had been lots of people in the hall. They could exclude Zach and the trading team. Since 2 days ago, they had been staying together under the tight surveillance of the security guards. Even if they had the intention of leaking out information, they would not have had that opportunity to do so. Next up were the heads of the 4 affluent families, along with the 2 officials with the government of Harbor City and Jake Cullen. "Who do you think is the most suspicious?" Zachary asked. "I've got no idea." Jasper shook his head. "Actually, the conclusion that there's a spy among us is also my own guess without any concrete proof. So as for who's the most suspicious, currently I only have very little information to go on. I can't say for sure." "All right, I'll conduct an investigation on this matter," said Zachary with a dark expression. At this point, being a spy for the funds to the Western countries was no different than selling one's own country to others. Zachary despised people who betrayed their country for their own luxury. "There's something that you might need to consider," Zachary said to Jasper. "The financial weekly magazine that's the biggest and most famous throughout Harbor City, Terrace Financial Weekly, hopes to have a special interview session with you." Jasper waved his hand and said, "I've got lots of work to do. I might not be free." It was an opportunity to integrate Gladness Entertainment movies when Harbor stocks were still in a recovery phase. He got to enter rapidly in those potential stocks that might rise in the future. There were tons of things awaiting for Jasper to accomplish. It won't do you any harm to spare some time to go over. They can follow your schedule. Besides, you'll still be able to gain some benefits from this weekly magazine. Regardless of what happens, Harbor City is a place that emphasizes reputation. There are many times where reputation might be more useful than benefits. Zachary's thoughtful words made Jasper change his mind. "All right then. Then please ask them to get in touch with me." In a quiet study room in a villa. Smack! A slap landed across Mitch's face. Due to that slap, Mitch stumbled and took 2 steps back. He nearly fell hard with his bottom hitting the floor. The burning pain on Mitch's face made him clench his fist, but he dared not retaliate or vent out his frustrations. He knew that his father, Kennedy, had a temper that was much worse than himself. Hence, he did not have the guts to speak even a word. "You scumbag!" Kennedy's exasperated roar exploded in Mitch's ears. "It's one thing if you lost your mind and lost some money. But how dare you be so daring, even dragging Zane along and selling the family's assets, tossing all of it away? Do you 2 fools know that you guys are the sons of affluent families? If news were to spread out about you guys doing short sales and trying to earn the hard-earned monies of Harbor City during the financial crisis, do you guys think that you'll be able to raise your heads high in Harbor City? Even the family's business will be affected as well." Chapter 210. Zane was hiding at a corner, shaking out of fear. He dared not let out a single word under Bob's stony gaze. He was feeling utterly aggrieved as well. Initially, he did not have the guts to do such a thing, but it was all because Mitch was overconfident. As such, he got all hyped up, and both of them gathered about $2 billion. They then placed all the funds into the shares. If it was just because of the $2 billion in funds, Kennedy would not be that exasperated. The main problem was that Mitch's actions could possibly expose him to everyone in Harbor City. His cooperation with Quantum Fund was a top secret and should never be known to any outsiders. For safety purposes, he had not told his son about it either. He had been cautious while working on it on the side, but his son nearly got into huge trouble. The thought of it made Kennedy disgruntled. "It's all because of Jasper." Mitch clenched his teeth and shouted, exasperated. "If it's not for him provoking me, I'd never have done short sales with such a big fund." Kennedy's expression darkened as he roared. "You've committed such a foolish mistake, yet you still want to put the blame on others? Being easily provoked by others will only mean that your composure is not sturdy enough." "Wait a moment." At that moment, Bob voiced out and said, "Mr. Langdon, it's useless if you continue being angry. It's better if you think of a way to fix things." "Mitch, earlier you said that Jasper provoked you. What actually happened?" Mitch and Zane both blurted the entire incident on the day they were at Victoria Harbor. Finally, Mitch gritted his teeth and said, "Back then, Jasper should have already known that he would be hosting the market rescue plan. That's why he intentionally provoked me and set up a plot against me. This man is utterly cruel." Zane was also so mad that his face had turned pale. He yelled, "Don't ever give me the chance. If I seize that chance, I'll be sure to make that mainlander suffer." Bob and Kennedy looked into each other's eyes, and everyone fell silent. "Jasper," Kennedy softly called out that name. "This brat is not as simple as he seems," said Bob with a deep voice. With a smirk, Kennedy said, "What's there to be afraid of? As long as he's in Harbor City and intends to run a business in Harbor City, we'll get our chance to go against him." Mitch opened his mouth to say, "Dad, we can't just let this matter slide aside." "Obviously not." Kennedy's expression darkened. "However, for these 2 days, you two better not show up anywhere. Don't leave the house. I'll arrange for someone to do their best to cover up this matter. At least there's good news, which is that the outsiders are temporarily unaware of you guys doing short sales." "Let me handle this matter," said Bob. "I'm still able to say something to the media of Harbor City." "Sure." Kennedy nodded. There were some things that would not be appropriate for him to handle himself, and Bob would be just the perfect person to do this. While Kennedy and his son were having a secret discussion, Jasper was already at the International Commerce Center of Harbor City. Even though it was named a center, in fact, it was the iconic building of Harbor City. As the tallest building in Harbor City, its outline had appeared in lots of dramas and movies made in Harbor City. On the 118th floor, at the top balcony, an umbrella, a coffee table, and 3 chairs. Jasper was sitting on the balcony, feeling the chilly breeze and the sunny weather. He had a lazy yet calm smile on his face. Henry, who was sitting beside, yawned. He was lazily lying and sunbathing. He sneaked a peek at the troop of security guards who were lined up at a place not far away and was jealous of them. "Right now, you're occupying a higher place in my dad's heart. He even said that he's worried about your safety. He has dispatched all the elite security guards to you. I've never received such treatment." Jasper smiled and ignored that statement, saying, "Has Jake arrived yet?" "Don't worry. I've already sent someone there to get him. Even if he has the guts, he won't be so bold to refuse to step forth." While he was talking, Jake, who looked famished, showed up at the entrance of the balcony. They both locked eyes. The moment Jake saw Jasper, the corners of his mouth twitched. He had a very dark expression on his face. Chapter 211. The moment Jake bumped into Jasper again, he gritted his teeth. He was so eager to pounce on Jasper and feast on him. After coming back from the Law's household that day, Jake had been listening to people singing praises at Jasper while they mocked him. He wondered who was the loudmouth who spread out the news of him being humiliated by Jasper in the Law's household. As such, Jake, a rich and influential person who led his life as if he was the main character in a novel, suddenly became the opposing character in a novel instead. He would himself in the office for almost the entire day and not come out. He knew that after this incident, he had humiliated his entire family throughout Harbor City. From then onward, no one would be willing to cooperate with him. He, as a stock trader, had no funds to invest in himself. Hence, what awaited him in the future was only death. Jake did not even consider whether to go to other countries to develop. However, at that moment, Henry's men had found him. Jake did not have the guts to not show up when faced with Henry's summon. At this moment, he was looking at Jasper, who was sitting on the balcony. His back was facing the sunny sky, and his casual white shirt made him look handsome under the umbrella. Even Jake had to admit that Jasper's appearance and aura were definitely of a prestigious person. This guy, he's from a family that's slightly of the lower class. If only he was from an affluent family of Harbor City, perhaps he might be a very successful person. That was what Jake thought as he made his way to Jasper and Henry. "Have a seat." Jasper pointed at the only empty seat. Jake said with a cold smile, "You called me over to continue humiliating me? You should begin right now. The winner is the king, and the fallen will be the loser. I've got nothing to comment on that. However, in regards to sitting, I'll pass on that. Humiliate you?" At that moment, Henry was not happy and said scornfully, "F***CKU. Who do you think you are? Do you have any idea how busy we are right now? There's a ton of stuff waiting to be settled. Who has the spare time to humiliate you? You've really overestimated yourself." While being lectured, Jake gritted his teeth and roared, "Then why did you guys call me over here? Don't tell me we're here to be friends? It's not that accurate if you say it's to be friends, but we can't say it's wrong from a different perspective," said Jasper with a soft chuckle. Jake looked at Jasper with a hostile gaze. He realized he was no longer able to see through what was going through the mind of that person. Harbor City is a very important place. However, I can't possibly stay in Harbor City forever. So, I need someone in Harbor City to help me settle some issues regarding business. Jasper said it without beating around the bush. He tapped on Jake and continued saying, "You're one of the candidates." Jake found it hilarious, yet felt exasperated at the same time. He said, "You're not holding a grudge against me and are even thinking of putting me in a very important position? Do you think I'm some 3-year-old kid who's easily cheated?" Jasper stood up and walked to the side of the balcony. Jake was in doubt. Hence he followed as well and stood not far away from Jasper. At that moment, if it was not for a group of security guards glaring from a place not far away, Jake might really push Jasper down to end everything. However, that was just a quick flash of an idea. Jake was aware that if he did that, he would be taken down before he could even make a move. Even though he hated Jasper, the hatred he had was not to a point where he would take him down with his life. Harbor City is indeed a city that can spellbind others. It's full of temptation, isn't it? Jasper faced the wind and the vast sky that was hundreds of meters wide. He said those words while facing the entire Harbor City. Chapter 212. Harbor City had just endured a financial crisis. Currently, its sky was so clear with sunny weather. Skyscrapers were standing tall under the dark blue sky. Each floor was shining, and there were lots of people strolling along the streets downstairs. Cars were passing by each other as well. Everything looked so lively. "Don't you wish to stand at the top of this city and enjoy its beauty from up here?" said Jasper. Jake looked at Jasper's back view and raised his brow. He had to admit that at that moment, he was indeed being mesmerized by the beauty mentioned by Jasper. Standing at the peak of Harbor City? That will be an enormous honor. That will really make my ancestors proud of me as well. It was also a target that made Jake keep putting in the effort. It was just that the target was way too far and hard for him to reach. Aside from fantasizing about it, Jake dared not think further about it. However, Jasper did not just have the guts to think about it, he even blurted it out. Besides, he was also making a move toward it. At least at that moment, everyone in Harbor City had come to know of the name Jasper. There's no such thing as being enemies forever in the business world. Only benefits exist. If you think that there's a miscommunication between us from earlier, and to you, it's a barrier that you can't overcome, then you may leave this instant. I give you my word that no one will stop you. After listening to Jasper's comment, Jake's face twitched. Finally, he snorted and said, "Previously, I was the one who insulted you in the first place. Then later on, you made me kneel and grovel to you, forcing me to take you as my master. Doesn't that make things equal? Equal? Maybe." Jasper's comment made Jake's expression change for the worst. From the moment he arrived up to that point, Jasper's words and actions made Jake think that he was intending to solve the issue. However, he did not expect Jasper to say such a thing after he surrendered. "However, to me, business is business. You have your strengths that I admire, and it's something that I need. This is the basis of our cooperation. It has nothing to do with other things. It's only up to whether or not you want to cooperate with us." Jasper spun around. The curve on his lips at that moment was no different from a demon in Jake's vision. He could not think it through. What kind of person will be able to really place their personal emotions aside when making a decision? Even if he previously had a very huge argument with Jasper, he should be discussing with Jasper with a calm spirit all, just because he possessed an ability that Jasper needed? Does such a person really exist in this world? For a time period, I'll be leaving Harbor City. When that happens, my investments in Harbor City will be under your supervision. You have the skills, but your temper is so bad. That's why I don't plan to give you the main authority. Without my permission, you can't make any decisions by yourself. I'll give you 5% of profits for your part for 1 year. Jake sneered. 5%, isn't that way too low? You can choose not to agree to it. You can just turn around and leave. At that moment, Henry came over and stood beside Jasper. He chuckled and said, "Of course, the moment you leave, I might end up giving you lots of trouble." Jasper frowned and looked at Henry, saying, "Don't frighten him." After saying it, Jasper's expression became awful as he said to Jake, "This is win-win cooperation. We're gaining benefits from each other. There won't be any revenge if you don't agree to it. Both parties cooperating on their own record is the basis to a cooperation process that will be guaranteed to be a success." Hearing Jasper's comment made Jake's expression look much better. Deep within his heart, he started having a good impression of Jasper. After all, when compared to Henry, Jasper was so generous that he could gain the respect of others. 5% is too little. It's so much lower than the market price. Jake was already inclined to give in, but he insisted on gaining more profits. It was normal human psychology. Jasper gradually raised his head and said, "The investments in Harbor City that I'm about to hand over to you are not less than $2 billion. Now, do you still think that 5% is little?" "What?" Jake was shocked and looked at Jasper, horrified. He was stunned by Jasper's large sum of money. Chapter 213. Since young, Jake was always surrounded by others and flattered by them. He grew up with the nickname of being a genius. He was always the ideal kid mentioned by other parents. Even on Wall Street, he was also considered to have become famous from a young age. However, it was those incidents that created Jake's ego and proud character. However, no matter what happened, no one would deny Jake's exceptionally strong working ability. In his 20s, he was able to create fame for himself on Wall Street. Such an ability was impossible to be seen in any ordinary person. Besides, Jake was also a bright person. After leaving the Law's household, even though he was very upset and suffered a lot, he took the time to calm himself. After looking back at his mistakes, he returned to witness Jasper's way of trading. He had to admit that if he was the one who operated it, Harbor stocks might be done for. Jake was not willing to admit it verbally, but deep within him, he knew it crystal clear. According to the momentum on the market, looking out for such an investment would require at least 15% of profits. Only then would it be considered as the norm. However, that was only for those small customers with millions of investments. This is $2 billion. To be honest, Jasper's offer was considered luxurious. Even if Jasper was not famous now, many people would still fight their way to get hold of the offer if it was extended to the public. The thought of it made Jake grit his teeth and say, "I'll take the offer." Jasper smiled and clapped Jake's shoulders, saying, "This is what you call knowing what's best. When are we signing the agreement?" Even though Jake had agreed to cooperate with Jasper, deep within his heart, he had completely surrendered to him. Even though his pride made him unable to step down without feeling awkward, he still forced himself to ask the question. "I'll get in touch with you after some time." Jasper waved his hand. "Sure, I'll be waiting for your news," said Jake. Then he left the scene. Looking at his back view, Henry elbowed Jasper. "Let's not talk about me, but there are tons of talented people in Harbor City. Why bother looking for him? Indeed, there are lots of talented people and investment management companies who can accept my task. However, in the near future, Harbor City will be operating as my second largest base. I won't be able to rest assured if I hand it over to other companies," said Jasper while shaking his head. As for the details, which involved Jasper's future and the plans for his business territory, there was no need to reveal them to Henry, as he would not be able to understand it. Then you'll be able to rest assured if it's Jake? Don't you forget that he's a man with greed. Besides, he even has a grudge against you, said Henry, astonished. Regardless of what he said, those two people were considered to have suspicions toward each other. He had never heard of an enemy who would be much more trustworthy than other people. He's aware of my relationship with your family, and he knows that I have good connections with the 4 affluent families of Harbor City, as well as the government of Harbor City. Hence, even if I'm not in Harbor City, he won't dare do anything foolish. An enemy who knows how overwhelming you are will do things more cautiously compared to a stranger who knows nothing about you. The chances of them doing foolish things will be fewer as well. Henry heard the comment and thought about it for a long time. He then said with a sorrowful tone, I don't get it. Aren't you guys tired? Every day, you guys are calculating so many things. It's as if you guys have to think through it 10 times. Let's go. Let's head home. Jasper stretched lazily. Henry quickly followed happily. He was already used to being the character of Jasper's underling. He still did not find anything weird about it. This time, Jasper did not return to the Law's household. Zachary was busy, and he was not able to divide his person to carry out other tasks at the same time. After the huge financial crisis that landed on Harbor City, Zachary would have to personally handle issues, be it the family's business or the issues in the government of Harbor City. Zachary even brought Anna along to help out. Chapter 214. Henry, who would only make things worse when he helped out, was cast over to Jasper without hesitation. That was why, when Jasper returned to the hotel, he immediately abandoned the idea of heading out to have fun, especially when he knew that Jasper was going to attend the interview session with Tara's Financial Weekly. Man, that's Tara's Financial Weekly. It holds such a great influence. They only interview big bosses, people like my dad. He was interviewed once. Even if that's the case, I haven't heard of such a thing as special interviews. At the executive lounge of Mandarin Oriental Hotel, Henry was saying to Jasper with an excited look, Why don't you go for the interview since you're so excited about it? Said Jasper with a smile. Henry's expression turned dark, and he said angrily, Forget it. If I'm able to attend an interview with them, my dad will laugh till he wakes up from his sleep. Knowing one's limit is the key to being a prestigious person. The key is to know one's limit. There's no such thing as something being impossible. Jasper left a comment when he noticed Henry being lifeless. According to Jasper's memories from his past life, later on in the future, Henry really got featured on a page in Tara's Financial Weekly. However, that was after he changed his ways and carried out a legit business. It was also after he married an athlete, the queen of diving. While they were talking, 3 people consisting of a lady and 2 men rushed into the executive lounge. The 2 men were carrying some supplies while the lady had delicate makeup on, looking quite stunning. She had short hair that reached her ears and was wearing a lady's suit. She did not have heavy makeup on, which made her appearance look fresh. That lady was Leilani Carlson, one of the most famous hosts in Harbor City. Nice to meet you, Mr. Lane. I'm Leilani Carlson, representing Tara's Financial Weekly. I'm responsible for the interview session with you this time. As a host who was used to dealing with lots of huge crises and had even interviewed many talented bosses from the business industry, Leilani was rather amiable and could easily leave a good impression on others. Jasper smiled and shook hands with her, saying, Nice to meet you. It's a pleasure. After taking a seat, Leilani said, We know that you're quite busy, Mr. Lane. So, let me get straight to the point. We're very grateful that you're willing to spend some time and cooperate with us to sit for this interview. In light of the market rescue plan which you hosted, you managed to rescue the finances of Harbor stocks, and they didn't suffer from further damages. Hence, the citizens of Harbor City are eager to know more about you. So this time, you'll be featured on the front page of our Tara's Financial Weekly. Henry, who was beside, was widening his eyes when he heard it. Once again, he was able to sense himself being extraordinarily weak when compared to Jasper, especially when he recalled his younger days of fooling around with young models, racing cars, clubs, and going to yacht gatherings. Look what others are fooling around with. He hosted a rescue market plan that's worth tens of billions. He's sitting for an interview with Terra's Financial Weekly and is even F***king getting featured on the front page. In Harbor City, the influence of Terra's Financial Weekly was just only second to the magazine Fortune, which was famous throughout the world. Will you need to specially take pictures for this? Jasper asked. If you have to take additional photos, then you guys can forget about it. I'm really very busy, and I have no time for makeup and taking photos. Jasper's comment nearly made Henry, who was beside him, jump to his feet. F***CKU. You may not have the time, but I do. Leilani was stunned for a moment. A weird sensation was dwelling within her. To be honest, Jasper was very easygoing. He did not have the ego of a young, ambitious man. Even if he was rejecting something, he could make others feel his sincerity as well. But this is Terra's Financial Weekly. Even if it was a boss like Caden, he had also given full cooperation and used one whole day for makeup and photo shoot when he was featured on the front page. If you're busy with work, Mr. Lane, then let's be flexible and immediately start with the interview. As for the photo shoot, we'll just seize any opportunity and take a few pictures. Later on, we'll choose a nice one and publish it, said Leilani. Let's start, said Jasper while nodding his head. Leilani hesitated again and said awkwardly to Henry, who was staring at a corner with an excited look, "Young Master Law, could you please move aside and have a seat while our shooting takes place? We don't want anyone else showing up beside Mr. Lane." Suddenly, Henry's expression turned dark. Flames of rage dwelled within him as he cursed internally. F***CKU. Chapter 215. Henry was so mad that his expression changed for the worst. Since when would young Master Law, who was almighty in Harbor City and had a good reputation, be cast aside disdainfully by others? She even thinks I'm a nuisance for being in the background? No need for that. Jasper suddenly spoke up and said with a smile, "Allow him in to be in the interview with me. After all, I think there are quite a number of readers who are rather curious about the identity of young Master Law." Jasper's request was one that did not comply with the standard set of rules. All this while such a professional interview was on a one-on-one basis. When would there be a scene where two people showed up and were interviewed at the same time? Plus, Henry is not on our list of to be interviewed as well. However, Leilani was not a fool. After giving it some thought, she understood that Jasper's suggestion would work out. Henry was not some random person, but the eldest young master of the Law family. During this market rescue plan, the 4 affluent families of Harbor City had spared some funds, and among them, the Law family had put in lots of effort. Logically speaking, he should be allowed to stay for this interview. The most important thing was that Leilani was able to recognize reality. If she were to reject the suggestion and did not do a perfect job, she would have to endure an earful of a lecture when she returned. Jasper would definitely not be happy as well, and she would even offend a mighty young master of Harbor City like Henry. Only a fool will do such a thing. All right, then shall we officially start our interview? After getting all set up, Leilani started with her first question. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Lane. You came from mainland, yet have become so famous in Harbor City. You were elected as the host for the market rescue plan. Besides, your performance truly did not let anyone down. In regards to this, do you have anything that you'd like to share with everyone?" Jasper thought for a moment and said with a smile, "If I were to share something, I will only say that gold will shine wherever it goes. I'm not trying to praise myself. I'm just trying to tell everyone that it's 99% effort, as well as a little bit of luck and a tiny bit of talent. Only by persevering one will ultimately be successful." Leilani's eyes sparkled. She had interviewed so many people before. Unless they had already memorized their lines, it was very rare for someone to perform in such a perfect manner during a spontaneous interview session. Jasper, at that moment, regardless of his mentality or vibe, all seemed natural without an ounce of anxiety. While they were talking, Jasper was behaving appropriately and was able to fulfill a difficult task with the least effort. Leilani had only sensed such a vibe and charisma on those bosses who had been famous for a very long time in the business industry. After asking a few routine questions, Leilani did not give Henry a cold shoulder and asked him, "Mr. Law, you're good friends with Mr. Lane. So, tell me, what kind of person is he in his usual life? Is he always this elegant and easygoing?" Henry nearly burst into laughter. He could not comprehend the fact that Leilani was able to sense that Jasper was elegant and easygoing. This brat is using his looks to cheat others again. Even though he was cursing frantically internally, Henry had a bright smile on his face. You're saying that about him? Previously, in my eyes, he was just a mainlander. No, actually, he's a very good person. Henry nearly went with the flow and revealed his relationship with Jasper. He immediately became serious when he remembered that this was a serious interview. In my life, my relationship with him is actually that of a master and a student. Leilani's eyes were open wide. She did not expect to get such an answer from the mouth of Henry. That's right. You're very surprised, right? Actually, I'm also quite astonished by my conclusion. Well, to be frank, during this period of time, I've learned a lot from him. At least I realized just how childish I was last time. Right now, he's the target that I'm running toward. Henry shrugged his shoulders. Initially, he had not planned to praise Jasper, but as he kept talking, he realized that speaking out what was in his mind was actually not an embarrassing thing to do. As that was the case, he might as well blurt out everything that was deep within him. Setting my master as my target and learning from him is not an embarrassing thing. Leilani's eyes were gleaming with rays of excitement. She could already predict that with just Henry's statement, this issue of the magazine would be able to sell out till it was out of stock. Mr. Lane, do you think you're a genius in the investing world? Under the lightings that gathered together, Jasper sat on the sofa with the most natural and comfortable posture. When facing Leilani's question, he kept silent for a moment. Maybe I have a bit of talent. Actually, I didn't have any interest in investment at the very beginning. I'm actually quite a lazy person. Henry glanced at Jasper as the corners of his mouth twitched. It's starting. It's starting again. This man is starting to put on an act. Chapter 216. Henry, who was eager to curse, did not show any fluctuations in his expression. He was even looking forward to seeing what sort of performance and script Jasper would put on and say next. Jasper's comment, which was said with a tone that made him appear calm, made Leilani experience a brief moment of suffocation. I still have some personal questions. Usually, when you're making friends, do you have any special criteria? Do you disregard identity and status? Or do those who are able to mingle with you need to possess a certain amount of wealth and status? I have no criteria. What matters is that I get along with them. I never look at their wealth nor status when I'm making friends because I know that usually those who are the same age as me will not be as rich as me. Henry caught the sign and grasped it on his chest. He was feeling an ache in his heart as he looked at Jasper's calm expression. Suddenly, he was feeling slightly envious of him. When can I be just like Jasper, able to blurt out such arrogant words carefreely? Mr. Lane, you've such high expectations in your investments. I heard that your returns from your previous investment were terrifying. May I ask what you're feeling about that? Well, I don't have many feelings about it. Actually, when you've earned a ton of fortune, money will become just numbers to you. Hearing it made Henry, who was beside him, and Leilani feel a strong urge coursing through them. Leilani forced herself to suppress the emotions within her. Her expression remained composed as she continued with the interview. Then, may I ask, do you have a target, Mr. Lane? Or in other words, have you ever thought that one day you'll be able to obtain the title of being the richest man in the country? No. If you insist on asking for a target, well, I guess I should at least be the richest man in the world. Leilani was speechless. This time, it was both Leilani and Henry whose expressions turned dark again. Even Leilani, who had received very stern training, was unable to remain composed in this interview. Even Henry wanted to purchase some cardiac medications. Are these even words spoken by a human? In his eyes, being the richest man in the country is not at all something to be proud of. Next up, Leilani followed her usual schedule and asked Jasper a few more questions before ending the interview. After the camera was off and the interview was over, Leilani let out a breath of relief. It was as if she had completed a big project. Mr. Lane, you're no doubt a more unique rich man I've ever interviewed. Not one of them, but the only one. Leilani's comment was approved by all the workers. The interview session was completed after being struck by a few continuous sudden strikes. Leilani and the two men left. Henry wiped off his sweat and glanced at Jasper with a weird gaze before asking weakly, "Do you have any idea how well you can act?" Jasper said astonishingly, "But all this while, I've just been stating the truth." Henry was speechless. Henry let out a dry laugh, and his expression was dark. In no time, Henry started scolding while leaving the scene. Judging from the contents of his words, he was feeling depressed and was heading over to look for his two girlfriends to comfort his soul that was injured. On the next day, at Hennessy Road of Harbor City, number 777, on the ground floor of Gladness Entertainment Movies. Hennessy Road was considered the most crowded street where all entertainment companies were. The four big movie companies were over here, and not far away from number 777, where Gladness Entertainment Movies was located, was Elite Corporation. At that moment, Gladness Entertainment Movies was very crowded. Even though it was a fact that the movie industry of Harbor City had declined, the company still shone brightly despite the poor financial status. At the entrance of Gladness Entertainment Movies, there were still people lingering around, and it was extremely lively. Jasper had come over today because he had made an appointment with Michael to sign the final purchasing agreement. He was not in a hurry, but Michael was. Michael was desperate for cash, as half of the cash he had was trapped within the stocks. He had earned $5 billion with $5 billion, which allowed him to have capital with a profit of $10 billion. However, he was not Jasper, and Zachary did not abuse his powers to help him out. Hence, it would take a very long time if he wanted to take out that $10 billion. That was why Michael kept remembering the $1.5 billion that Jasper would be paying to purchase Gladness Entertainment Movies. Even though they had agreed to sign the agreement on that day, Jasper did not inform Michael in advance when he came over. He planned to have a look at Gladness Entertainment Movies' operation, whether or not it was still functioning well. That would affect his decision on whether or not he should change the employees of the higher management after purchasing Gladness Entertainment Movies officially. Once the ruler was changed, the underlings would be changed as well. Those who were of no use to Jasper would obviously need to step down. Out of the way! Out of the way! As soon as Jasper entered the entrance of the building, he heard an impatient voice coming from behind. Following then, there was a hand stretched out, attempting to push Jasper away. Jasper took a step back and evaded that hand. "What the F***CK? Didn't you hear me asking you to get out of the way?" The owner of that hand was a middle-aged man with an average physique and a potbelly. Earlier, he ended up pushing the air and felt that he had lost his dignity as he looked at Jasper with a fierce gaze. "You must be Scarlett's fan, right? Did you happen to know that she'll be coming here to Gladness Entertainment Movies this morning? Hence, you've come here earlier to wait? Hurry up and get lost." Chapter 217. Jasper calmly stared at the middle-aged man who had a big head and equally large ears. Then, he glanced at the ladder's working pass on his neck and said faintly, "You're an employee of Gladness Entertainment Movies?" The middle-aged man suddenly let out a smile and said, "I'm glad you're aware of it. Later, you'd better behave appropriately and stand aside. Don't go causing any trouble. You hear me?" While he was speaking, a commotion suddenly broke out at the entrance. A luxurious car came to a halt at the entrance of the company, and immediately, there was someone who went over attentively and opened the car door while serving the owner. This scene was as if a director of a company had shown up. Jasper calmly said to the middle-aged man who had an excited expression on his face while he tidied his suit, "In the eyes of your movie company, no matter how famous a celebrity is, they're just a money maker. Do you have to do things in such a grand manner?" The middle-aged man glanced at Jasper and said scornfully, "What do you know? How is Scarlett the same as others? The son of our company's vice president, Mr. White, is courting her. She might just become the daughter-in-law to the vice president. A loser like yourself, who can only lick her on the screens, can just forget about it for the rest of your life." At that moment, the door of the car flung open. The first to come down was a young man who insisted on wearing a suit that was made specifically for him. His entire body was giving off an exquisite aura, revealing his identity as a young master to a rich family. That man put on a smiling face and opened the car door attentively. Then a female celebrity who was well known throughout the entire nation came out of the car. Scarlett Yates, being a part of Purple Fairy, had immediately pushed her up to the peak among the female celebrities of Harbor City. She was considered the crush of most of the people in the same age group in the entire nation. Currently, Scarlett was at the point where she was extremely famous. As soon as she got down from the car, there was a reporter frantically taking her pictures, and there were lots of fans holding up her posters and pictures while shouting out her name. If it was not for the security personnel blocking the way, perhaps the scene might be thrown into chaos. When faced with the questions from the reporters, Scarlett smiled politely but did not answer any of them. Under the escort of the young master from the rich family from earlier, they went straight into the company. The young man glanced at the entrance of the company, feeling disgusted. He even pouted his mouth at those reporters who were rushing in and muttered, "These reporters are way too annoying." As he was saying, the man glanced at the surroundings. He immediately spotted Jasper, who had long ago been standing at the side. He found Jasper to be an eyesore. "Who is this guy?" He pointed at Jasper and asked irritatedly. The middle-aged man planned to head forth and reply, but he soon got ruthlessly lectured. "Didn't I mention before that the company doesn't permit these ordinary people to enter? These fans are just so disgusting. They think of all means to get in here to cause havoc." As he was talking, the young man lost his patience and waved his hand to Jasper as if he was getting rid of a fly. "Get lost," Jasper said with a stony expression. "Regardless of whether or not I'm a fan, am I causing you any trouble by just standing here and having a look?" The young man did not expect Jasper to answer back. He snorted and said with his eyes squinted, "Judging from your slang, you must be from mainland?" The young man put on a disdainful expression when he commented on that, as if there was a disease on Jasper that would spread to him. "Scarlett, your fans from mainland have chased you all the way till here," said the man as he burst into laughter. Scarlett could no longer tolerate it and said to Jasper, "Nice to meet you. If you're my fan, I need to tell you that I'm currently rushing to a meeting in the company. So, right now, I don't have much time. Why don't I give you one of my pictures with my signature on it?" Jasper was rather surprised to see Scarlett being so polite. She knew her manners. He said faintly, "All right." In Jasper's past life, he really did fancy Purple Fairy for some time. Scarlett gave a sweet smile directed to Jasper. Then, she spun around and received a picture from her agent. Celebrities like her would often bump into fans when she was out of her house. Hence, she had prepared all these things in advance. She signed the picture, then gave it to Jasper while saying, "Thank you for your support." After receiving the picture, Jasper was surprised that it was a picture from the drama where Scarlett was dressed up as Purple Fairy. Chapter 218. "Beautiful," Jasper said sincerely. Scarlett smiled. She turned around and was about to walk away, but noticed the gloomy expression on the wealthy, second-generation white heir's face. "All right, can you go away now? I came to Gladness Entertainment Movies to take care of some business." "Why should I leave?" Jasper shot back. Mac almost laughed out loud. "The F***CK. You damn country bumpkin, I've met a lot of sons of B** cheese, but you're the biggest one there is. You're here at Gladness Entertainment Movies to take care of business? Do you actually know what this place is? Get lost now, or I'll call security to throw you out," Jasper said coldly. "Are you an employee of this company?" Mac gave a smug smile as he replied, "My father is the vice president of Gladness Entertainment Movies." I asked, "Are you an employee of this company?" Mac's expression gradually darkened. "You're really not going to give up until reality smacks you in the face, huh? You want to act all high and mighty in front of me even when you're not. All right then." Seeing that the situation was escalating, Scarlett hurriedly said to Mac, "Mac, why don't we leave now? Today's company meeting is very important, and Mr. Lane will be attending personally. Let's not waste any more time." Mac eyed Jasper coldly and ground out through gritted teeth, "Count yourself lucky today, bumpkin." As he spoke, Mac directed his words at the middle-aged man beside him, who had broken out in a cold sweat. "This is Gladness Entertainment Movies. It's a big company. Not every Tim, Dick, and Harry can come in here. You don't want your job anymore, is that it? If that's the case, I'll just let my father know you can get out immediately." No. Rest assured, Mr. White. I'll call security immediately and chase him out." The middle-aged man's expression was full of panic. With a snort, Mac eyed Jasper and sneered, "Bumpkin, Harbor City isn't somewhere you can come and act like some pretentious prick. Remember that. Now get lost." With that, Mac and Scarlet left together. With a frosty glance at Mac's back, Jasper headed inside the building. "Hey!" the middle-aged man exclaimed, and hurried over with 2 security guards to stop him. "You were told to get lost, didn't you hear? Are you that keen on digging your own grave?" The middle-aged man asked Jasper in flustered exasperation. "Why are you acting like his flunky when he's not someone from the company?" Jasper asked coldly. With a sneer, the middle-aged man retorted, "How can a country bumpkin like you be such an idiot? His father is the vice president." "The vice president? Do you understand? He could crush you with just the tip of a finger. You're already pretty lucky to have gotten an autograph photo, so go home and lap it up. Now hurry up and leave." As the middle-aged man was speaking, the door of the elevator opened, and a capable, experienced career woman hurried out. The moment she noticed Jasper at the door, her eyes lit up and she approached him with the utmost respect. When the middle-aged man saw her, he was startled. In an instant, his expression altered, becoming 1,000,000 times more circumspect than when he had faced Mac. He went up to her and said very cautiously, "Secretary Lee, why are you here? If you have any instructions, you only need to give us a call and we'll take care of things." Secretary Lee ignored him. Walking over to stand directly in front of Jasper, she said deferentially, "Mr. Lane, you've already arrived. Mr. Lane is in the meeting room upstairs waiting for you to commence the signing ceremony. Would you follow me, please?" Jasper gave the ghastly pale, middle-aged man a bland look and asked, "What is this person's position?" Secretary Lee did not know what the middle-aged man had done to offend Jasper. Nevertheless, she replied, "He is one of the deputy reception managers. Have him pack up his things and leave." After saying this, Jasper immediately headed toward the elevator. Secretary Lee looked at the violently trembling middle-aged man, whose forehead was drenched in cold sweat. Shaking her head, she noted, "You heard him, right? Go get your salary from finance, sign the termination agreement, and leave." The middle-aged man asked indignantly, "That fellow? Who is he? Isn't he just some country bumpkin from the mainland? He's our new boss." With a look of pity at the middle-aged man, Secretary Lee hurried to catch up with Jasper and left. With a plop, the middle-aged man sat right down on the floor, ashen-faced. Chapter 219. The building of Gladness Entertainment Movies had a total of 26 floors. Jasper took the elevator directly to Michael's office on the top floor. "Mr. Lane, why didn't you tell me you're coming? I could have arranged for someone to welcome you in advance." Michael laughed aloud as he stood up and walked to the door. He shook Jasper's hand. "I came to take a look at how Gladness is, and I wasn't disappointed," Jasper said meaningfully. Michael smiled a little and thought nothing of it. He dismissed Secretary Lee with a wave of his hand. He invited Jasper to take a seat and said, "All families have skeletons in their closets. To be honest, I've indeed neglected my business in the film industry in the past 2 years, which has led to some issues within the high-level and mid-level management." Michael tapped his temple lightly as he said, "Mr. Lane, you're throwing me a mess." Jasper rubbed between his brows and said. Michael smiled and replied, "You don't have to be so pessimistic. Most of the higher-ups are fairly diligent and conscientious, such as the current CEO, Ryder Lawrence. He was hired back from Holuvu with a large sum of money. You can use him as you wish. We'll talk after I get to know him," Jasper said. "Shall we get going then? The signing ceremony is ready. All the higher-ups and top-tier celebrities who are important to the company are already there," Michael said. Jasper got up, nodded, and said, "Let's go." The meeting room on the 25th floor of the company. The huge meeting room was full at the moment, and everyone was whispering to one another. The people sitting in the frontmost row were all the current top executives of Gladness Entertainment Movies. CEO Ryder Lawrence was a man in his early 40s who was wearing gold-rimmed glasses and a solemn expression. A wealthy-looking middle-aged man came over from the side and inquired, "Mr. Lawrence, what is Mr. Lane's plan? I'm a little puzzled that the company has been sold all of a sudden. I heard that it was sold to a mainlander. Do you know anything about it?" Ryder shook his head and said, "I'm not sure. Mr. White, just mind your own business. You still have to work regardless of who the company is sold to, no?" Joseph chuckled and said yes, but in his heart, he was cursing Ryder. You Ryder Lawrence is a CEO who can just brush his bottom and leave anytime. I'm King tied to Gladness Entertainment Movies since a long time ago. Where else can I go besides here? Joseph's worry echoed with the vast majority of people in Gladness Entertainment Movies. No one knew what this new boss was like. Some of the top-tier celebrities were quite fine with this. With their fame, they were not afraid of not being able to put food on the table. However, for the other shady mid to high-level managers, their hearts were drumming in their chests. A little to the front from the middle of the meeting room, Max said to Scarlett, who was next to him, "Rest assured, my dad holds a veteran status within the company. No matter who the boss is, they'll have to count on him. When the time comes, I'll ask my dad to keep you busy, and the resources you will get will definitely be much more than what you have now." Scarlett suppressed her annoyance and said politely, "Thank you then." Max smiled smugly and said, "My dad started this business with Mr. Lane. Many matters in Gladness Entertainment Movies were personally spearheaded by my dad. My dad's status is higher than anyone else's." Suddenly, the buzzing meeting room quietened down. The side door of the meeting room opened, and everyone's gazes were drawn to it. The main character was here. Michael was the first one to be seen, but he was very polite. After entering, he turned sideways and made a gesture of invitation. A very young man with an imposing presence walked in immediately afterward. Everyone was shocked by this man's youth upon seeing him. Mac and Scarlett, who were sitting in their seats, had expressions that were beyond incredulous. Especially Mac, whose eyes were widened and had his hair on end. It was as though he had seen a ghost in broad daylight. Chapter 220. The person who came in was Jasper Lane, the one who was hooted and driven away by him downstairs earlier. "Isn't he that country bumpkin?" Mac cried out involuntarily. At this time, Jasper had already walked toward the center of the meeting room at Michael's invitation. Michael would be selling the company to Jasper in the next moment, so he was tactful. Even though he was still the current chairman, he still deliberately lagged behind Jasper by half a step, highlighting Jasper's future authority in Gladness Entertainment Movies. After he took the microphone, Michael said to everyone who was still shocked by Jasper's youth, "Today's a sentimental day, but also a day worthy of joy. Today, the Gladness Entertainment Movies of the past will come to an end. But today is also the day where the brand new Gladness Entertainment Movies will welcome a new life." Michael was very good with words. After his opening speech, he continued right away, "As the chairman of Gladness Entertainment Movies, I have one last thing to announce today. Gladness Entertainment Movies will be sold to Mr. Jasper Lane, who's next to me. He will lead everyone to higher glory in the future." Then came the signing ceremony. There was still thunderous applause regardless of what everyone below the stage thought. After signing and exchanging documents, Jasper formally acquired 100% equity of Gladness Entertainment Movies and was automatically elected as the chairman of the board of directors and concurrent chairman. Michael stepped down after handing the microphone to Jasper. Jasper smiled a little as he stood on the highest spot of the meeting room, looking at the employees of Gladness Entertainment Movies beneath, who looked at him with various expressions. He said, "Hello, everyone. I'd like to thank Mr. Lane for his trust. I will replace Mr. Lane and continue to push Gladness Entertainment Movies toward the peak from here on." This was considered to be Jasper's declaration after he took the throne of Gladness Entertainment Movies. There was another round of applause. However, today's meeting is an internal meeting. Is there anyone present who does not hold any position in Gladness Entertainment Movies and is not a contract artist of Gladness Entertainment Movies? Jasper's words distorted Mac's expression as he had already been anxious and fearful for the past few minutes. The corners of his mouth twitched. His expression was stiff and his face was flustered. The others also felt a little baffled by Jasper's words. Everyone gradually looked toward Mac. In the past 2 years, Mac had done a lot of resentful things in the company using his father's identity. Even some female stars would bow down to him and had to please him. Jasper's words immediately shrouded the meeting room with an extremely weird atmosphere. At this moment, Jasper followed everyone's gaze and looked at Mac White. Under everyone's gaze, Mac stood up with an expression of embarrassment and anger. He felt like a monkey being surrounded and watched by people in the zoo at this moment. This is Gladness Entertainment Movies meeting room. You're neither an employee nor a contracted artist of Gladness Entertainment Movies. So what are you doing here? Jasper asked dully. At this moment, everyone understood that this would be the first cut of the newly appointed boss knife. Nobody knew how Mac White had offended the new boss, so much so that he was being addressed directly. Most people looked at Mac gloatingly, wishing him bad luck. Mac found it difficult to speak and could not think of an appropriate reason. As such, he could only ask for help by looking over at his father, Joseph White. Joseph frowned a little and looked at Jasper darkly, his expression slightly gloomy. Naturally, Joseph could not bear to watch his own son be humiliated. Just as he was about to speak, he heard Jasper's voice, shocking the audience through the speakers. "Get out!"